Chapter 2464. Yu Qinglong's gaze was sinister and cold, looking at Nie Tian as if he was looking at a dead man. In his eyes, Nie Tian was already a dead man. In Jade Maple City, if he wanted someone dead, that person would die without a doubt. At least, that was what he thought in his heart. At this moment, the crowd was looking at Nie Tian with fear and sympathy in their eyes. This kid is so unlucky. Of all people, he had to provoke third young Master Yu. Look at this silver kid. He's probably new to Jade Maple City and doesn't even know who third young Master Yu is. The girl beside this kid is quite pretty. After he dies, she'll probably be taken advantage of by third young Master Yu. The crowd discussed in hushed voices, already prepared to watch a good show. Idiot! Hearing the crowd's discussion, Nie Tian frowned and looked cold at Yu Qinglang, spitting out two words. What did you say? Yu Qinglang was stunned, as if suspecting that he had heard wrongly. He let out a strange cry, his eyes wide open. The crowd was also stunned, their eyes trembling with astonishment. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would suddenly say such a thing? Publicly insulting third young Master Yu on the streets of Jade Maple City. Wasn't Nie Tian courting death? I said you're an idiot. Nie Tianling laughed, not even bothering to look at Yu Qinglang. He turned to Jun Aoqing and said, "Let's go." In Nie Tian's eyes, Yu Qinglang was no different from an idiot, using his status to act like a tyrant in a small city. If he wasn't an idiot from the bottom of a well, then what was he? Stinking brat, you're courting death. Yu Qinglang flew into a rage and let out a wild roar. Unable to control himself, he blurred into motion and attacked Nie Tian. Boom! Yu Qinglong's aura surged, endless power condensing into a giant green wooden hand in the air, pressing down on Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian continued to walk leisurely without paying any attention to Yu Qinglang. Has this kid gone mad? Seeing that Nie Tian didn't move at all, the crowd was stunned once more and exclaimed in shock. In the next instant, a strange scene occurred. Bang! Yu Qinglong's palm came crashing down, but a muffled sound rang out in the air as his figure was sent flying. Pooh! Yu Qinglong's figure was still in the air when he spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he crashed heavily onto the ground, leaving a bloody trail behind him. The crowd was completely shocked by the scene in front of them. Many of them opened their mouths wide, but couldn't make a sound. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Nie Tian had actually managed to severely injure Yu Qinglang with just his aura. Yu Qinglang was a mid-paramount god, and although he wasn't a top expert in the 9 realms, he wasn't weak either. For Nie Tian to be able to injure Yu Qinglang with just his aura meant that he was a half-step peak expert. There were very few paramount gods present, so very few people could see through Nie Tian's true strength. They only thought that Nie Tian looked so young, so there was a limit to how strong he could be. They hadn't expected Nie Tian to be so strong. Trash, Nie Tian said with a cold laugh. Without even looking back, he continued walking forward. He couldn't be bothered with Yu Qinglang. It wasn't worth wasting time on someone like him. The only reason he had so many Yu Qinglang was because of his identity. QL11 Yu Qinglang was a member of the Yu family, and Nie Tian was going to visit the head of the Yu family soon. When the crowd heard Nie Tian's cold laughter, they couldn't help but shiver in fear. Only now did they realize why Nie Tian dared to be so arrogant. He really did have the strength. Bastard! Yu Qinglang crawled to his feet and roared. He looked at the 3 black-robed cultivators in front of him and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill this brat." Zhang Kuang's ruthless voice fell, but the 3 black-clothed cultivators did not move at all. They did not even take a single step. They were all late paramount gods, so how could they not see how terrifying Nie Tian was? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if they made a move, Nie Tian could kill them in an instant. Anyone who made a move now would be a fool. Being scolded by Yu Qinglang was better than being killed. The crowd looked at the 3 black-robed cultivators in shock, but then they realized that they didn't dare to act rashly. A bunch of trash. Yu Qinglang's anger had reached its peak. Seeing that his 3 subordinates were not moving, he let out a wild roar, stomped his feet, and leaped into the air. He actually attacked Nietian again. "You're courting death." In an instant, Nietian felt the killing intent behind him. He couldn't help but frown and let out a cold roar. Then, he turned around and his body shook. A ray of sword energy howled out and turned into a sharp blade in the air. It split into two and slashed forward. In the next moment, Yu Qinglang didn't even have time to react before he felt a cold sensation on his cheeks, followed by a sharp pain. His body sank, and he fell to the ground again. He took a few steps back and almost fell. When he steadied himself, he immediately realized what had happened. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he was shocked to the extreme. Nietian had left 2 sword marks on his face. At this moment, Yu Qinglang's face was a bloody mess. Waves of burning pain spread throughout his body. The crowd's eyes darkened as they looked at Yu Qinglang in fear. They couldn't believe their eyes. Who would have thought that Nietian would dare to leave a sword mark on Yu Qinglang's face? A sword mark was not only a great humiliation to a swordsman, but also to any martial artist. No matter what, Yu Qinglang was the young master of the Yu family. Wasn't Nietian humiliating him the same as humiliating the Yu family? Yu Qinglang understood and screamed crazily as if he had gone mad. Nietian looked at Yu Qinglang coldly and said in a deep voice, "Yu Qinglang, the reason why you are still alive is not because you are powerful, but because you are from the Yu family. If your surname wasn't Yu, you would have been a corpse long ago. These 2 sword marks are just a reminder. If you continue to be arrogant, I will take your life." The indifferent voice was filled with a strong sense of threat. Yu Qinglang stood rooted to the ground and looked at Nietian with unconcealable shock and fear. After Nietian finished speaking, he did not stay any longer and directly left with Junouching. He still had to pay a visit to the head of the Yu family. That was his real business. As Nietian's figure left, the crowd stared in the direction he left. They stared for a long time, unable to recover from their shock. Who would have thought that the 3rd young master of the Yu family would be humiliated like this in Jade Maple City? And the person who humiliated the 3rd young master could leave so calmly. Yu Qinglang being humiliated by Nietian made the crowd feel good from the bottom of their hearts. Yu Qinglang was the tyrant of Jade Maple City. Someone should have taught him a lesson long ago. At this moment, Yu Qinglang seemed to have recovered from his fear and suddenly let out a fierce roar. His entire face was hideous like a ferocious beast, distorted and terrifying. Chapter 2465. On the main street of Jade Maple City, 2 figures walked side by side. They were Nietian and Junouching. "Nietian, we're about to meet the patriarch of the Yu family. You just humiliated the 3rd young master of the Yu family. Will anything happen to you?" Junouching frowned and asked worriedly. "It's fine. I just taught an idiot a lesson." Nietian was calm and unconcerned. "As long as the patriarch of the Yu family isn't an idiot, he won't make things difficult for us." Junouching nodded and forced a smile. However, she still felt that this trip to the Yu family would be a little troublesome. After a while, Nietian and Junouching arrived at the entrance of the Jade Mansion. The gate of the Jade Mansion was guarded by 2 guards, and it was heavily guarded. "Who are you?" Nietian walked forward. Before he could speak, the 2 guards stepped forward and growled coldly. "Brothers, I'm from the Wind and Cloud Alliance. I'm here to pay a visit to the patriarch of the Yu clan." Nietian smiled faintly. He had long since prepared for this. He took out a command medallion and handed it over. A Wind Cloud medallion. The 2 guards exclaimed in shock upon seeing the medallion in Nietian's hand. They never thought that the seemingly ordinary Nietian could take out a Wind and Cloud token. The Wind and Cloud token could be said to be one of the most authoritative tokens in the 9 realms. The Wind and Cloud token in Nietian's hand was given to him by Niedao before he left the Wind and Cloud Alliance. "My lord, please come in." The 2 guards did not dare to be negligent and respectfully made way. Nietian smiled faintly and walked in. After entering the Jade Mansion, Nietian and Junouching were led by a guard to the main hall of the Jade Mansion. "My lord, please wait a moment. I'll go invite the patriarch." The guard bowed and left. Nietian was not in a hurry and waited in the lobby. Not long after, a green-robed figure appeared outside the hall. Before he entered the hall, his voice could be heard. "Welcome, Fengyan envoy. I hope you will forgive me for not going out to welcome you." Nietian stood up and walked out of the hall. He looked at the green-robed man with a burning gaze and said with a faint smile, "What is Patriarch you saying? Nietian has taken the liberty to pay a visit. I apologize for disturbing you." At this moment, the person who appeared before Nietian was a middle-aged man. He was tall and wore a long robe. His aura was strong, and one look was enough to tell that he was a half-step peak powerhouse. Niedao had told Nietian about the Yu family's patriarch before, so Nietian recognized the person in front of him at a glance. It was the Yu family's patriarch, Yu Shenglin. "Little friend Nietian, please come in." Yu Shenglin looked at Nietian and was surprised by the latter's youth. His gaze couldn't help but tremble, and then it returned to normal as he smiled faintly. Then, everyone entered the hall and took their seats. Yu Shenglin sat on the main seat and looked at Nietian. He seemed to be thinking about something, but he didn't say it out loud. Instead, he said, "Little friend Nietian, may I know why the Wind and Cloud Alliance Master sent you here?" Nietian smiled faintly and said, "Patriarch Yu, to tell you the truth, I'm not here on the Wind and Cloud Alliance Master's orders. I'm here for a private matter." "Private matter?" Yu Shenglin was stunned for a moment, and then his expression turned displeased. He was the patriarch of a great family after all, and his status was respected. He heard that Nietian was a wind and cloud envoy, so he personally received him. He didn't expect that Nietian was here for a private matter. However, Yu Shenglin didn't go overboard and still maintained his composure. After all, Nietian had the wind and cloud badge, and he was a person with the surname Nia. "Nietian, why are you looking for me?" However, Yu Shenglin's tone changed, and even the way he addressed Nietian changed. Nietian didn't mind, and said with a smile, "I'm here to give something to you, and also to borrow a person from you." "Give something? Borrow someone?" Yu Shenglin's expression turned even colder after hearing Nietian's words. He sipped on his tea and said, "Tell me, what do you want to give? Who do you want to borrow?" "I want to give this." Nietian's expression was still calm. He flipped his palm, and a badge appeared in his palm. It was the badge that Yuli passed to him before he died. Yu Shenglin's eyes narrowed when he saw the badge in Nietian's hand, and he spat out the tea that he had just swallowed. His eyes turned red, and he stared at the badge in Nietian's hand without blinking. Nietian looked at Yu Shenglin's excited and comical reaction and remained calm. He knew that this badge was very important to the Yu family, so it wasn't strange for Yu Shenglin to have such a reaction. After a few seconds, Yu Shenglin snapped to his senses and asked in a trembling voice, Nietian, my young friend, where did you get that identity medallion?" The badge in Nietian's hand was called the Ancient Jade Badge, and it was the personal badge of the Yu family's ancestor. More importantly, the Ancient Jade Badge was related to a big secret of the Yu family, and it was related to the Yu family's ancestral grounds. The Yu family's ancestral grounds had always been sealed, and the main reason was because there was no Ancient Jade Badge. The Ancient Jade Badge was the key to opening the Yu family's ancestral grounds. Yu Shenglin couldn't figure out why the personal badge of the Yu family's ancestor would be in Nietian's hands. "The badge in my hand was given to me by Lord Yuli himself, and he asked me to give it to you," Nietian said calmly, without hiding anything. "This?" Yu Shenglin was stunned again and looked at Nietian in shock. He opened his mouth, but couldn't make a sound. What era did the Yu family's ancestor belong to? And what era did Nietian belong to? They didn't belong to the same era, so how did they know each other? Nietian, are you joking?" Yu Shenglin forced himself to calm down and asked with a trembling voice, "Patriarch Yu, look at me. Do I look like I'm joking?" Nietian smiled faintly and asked, "My ancestor died in the ancient times, in your age." Yu Shenglin couldn't hide the shock in his heart and said with a deep voice, Lord Yuli didn't die before, but was imprisoned in the Dark Sea prison." Nietian didn't wait for Yu Shenglin to finish and interrupted him, and then briefly told him what happened in the Dark Sea prison. He didn't hide much from Yu Shenglin, and even said that he killed Yu Li with his own hands. You killed my ancestor. Yu Shenlin stood up after hearing Nie Tian's words, and his aura exploded, causing the entire hall to shake as if it was about to collapse. Nie Tian already knew that Yu Shenlin would have such a reaction, so he didn't panic and said calmly, Lord Yu, you don't understand the situation at that time, and I don't want to explain too much. Lord Yu Li has been imprisoned in the Dark Sea prison for so many years, and his mind has already been swallowed by darkness. You don't want him to be imprisoned forever, do you? If you want to avenge Lord Yu Li, I accept, but I have to remind you, with your current strength, you may not be a match for me. His voice was calm, but every word was filled with arrogance. Yu Xinglin's eyes trembled, and he was stunned, obviously thinking about something. Chapter 2466. The main hall of the Jade Mansion was dead silent. The atmosphere was a little strange. After a while, Yu Xinglin's aura dissipated. He slowly sat down and regained his calmness. He knew that Nie Tian was right. He might not be Nie Tian's opponent. Since Nie Tian could kill Yu Li, it meant that his strength was unimaginable. Furthermore, Yu Shenlin also sensed that Nie Tian's body contained a terrifying power that even he was apprehensive of. Leader Yu, you are indeed a smart man. Nie Tian smiled. He flipped his palm and tossed the jade token to Yu Shenlin. Yu Shenlin caught the token and his eyes widened. He had never expected that Nie Tian would return the jade medallion so easily. Nie Tian, my friend, you just said that you want to borrow someone from the Yu clan. What do you mean by that? Yu Shenlin carefully put away the token and calmed down. He looked at Nie Tian and asked. With a faint smile, Nie Tian said, Clan Master Yu, aside from returning the identity medallion, I also made another deal with Lord Yu Li. What deal? Yu Xinglin's eyes flashed with passion. Next, I will help the Yu clan find the complete heart of the soul of all wood. Nie Tian said calmly. QL11 Yu Shenlin frowned, and his expression changed. He never thought that Nie Tian would help the Yu clan find the heart of the soul of all wood. Nie Tian, my friend, are you serious? Yu Shenlin calmed down and asked in surprise. Of course. Nie Tian smiled. I already know where the heart of the soul of all wood is. I just need someone from the Yu clan to accompany me. That's why I want to borrow someone from the Yu clan. Of course. No problem. Yu Xinglin's eyes flickered with excitement as he nodded vigorously and said, Other than me, young friend Nie Tian, you can take any member of the Yu clan with you. That's good. Thank you, family head Yu. Nie Tian smiled. It seemed like things were going much smoother than he had imagined. Men. At this moment, Yu Shenlin shouted. Your subordinate is here. A voice replied from outside the hall. Pass down this family head's order. Gather all the direct descendants of the Yu family to the martial arts arena. Yu Shenlin ordered loudly, then added, Remember, all direct descendants must be present. Yes. The person outside the door was taken aback, not knowing what Yu Shenlin wanted to do. However, he still agreed and left to do as he was told. Little friend Nie Tian, please wait for a moment. We will go to the martial arts practice field to pick people later, Yu Shenlin said respectfully, unable to conceal the smile on his face. Nie Tian nodded slightly and laughed in his heart. This guy is more anxious than me. About half an hour later, Yu Shenlin and Nie Tian left the lobby and headed for the training field. A while later, the two arrived outside the training field. At this moment, there were several hundred cultivators standing in an orderly fashion in the field. They were all very strong, with the weakest being an overgod. These several hundred people were the direct descendants of the Yu family's younger generation, as well as the genius cultivators of the Yu family. However, at this moment, everyone's gazes were focused on one person, because the two sword scars on his face were just too eye-catching. What happened to Third Brother? Where did those two sword scars come from? Haven't you heard? Third Brother met a silver-haired brat on the streets today. The sword scars on his face were left by that brat. Just who is it that is so arrogant to dare to attack Third Brother in Jade Maple City? Third Brother is looking for that brat, saying that he wants to cut him into 1,000 pieces. The crowd discussed. The target of their discussion was none other than Yu Qinglang. who had 2 sword scars on his face by Nye Tian not long ago. At this moment, Yu Qinglong's face was red with anger, causing the 2 sword scars on his face to become even more obvious. If the clan lord hadn't suddenly summoned all of the direct descendants of the Yu family, he wouldn't have made an appearance. Now, Yu Qinglang had become a laughingstock in everyone's eyes. As a result, his hatred towards Nye Tian grew even deeper. Bro, big bro Sean, who bullied you? Tell me, and I'll teach him a lesson for you. Even as Yu Qinglang was feeling very embarrassed, an enormous figure appeared and spoke in a slurred voice. Get the hell out of my way, old nine, Yu Qinglang said, looking up at the enormous man. Feeling even more annoyed, he said in a cold voice. Silly nine, the 3 of them are still angry. Don't provoke him. The others laughed and shouted at the giant man. This enormous man was ranked 9th in the younger generation of the Yu family, and his name was Yu Shuang. However, he had been born with an incomplete mind, which was why he was called Silly Nine. Although Yu Shuang was a fool, he was actually the strongest of the younger generation and was already a peak paramount god. Even the 7th son of the Yu family, Yu Qingqi, wasn't a match for Yu Shuang. However, because Yu Shuang wasn't mentally strong, other than the members of the Yu family, no one knew of his existence. Fine, fine, Yu Shuang said, pouting and backing off to the side. Why are you so fierce? However, at this time, Yu Qinglong's eyes turned as if he had thought of something. Immediately, he walked to Yu Ji Wushuang's side and said with a smile, Good 9th brother. Later, you'll go out with 3rd brother and help him kill someone. How about it? Kill someone, Yu Shuang blurted, then waved his hand. I'm a good kid. I don't kill people. Seeing this, the others burst into laughter. Because Yu Shuang was strong and mentally weak, his mother was afraid that he would cause trouble. Ever since he was a child, she had told him that he was never to kill anyone. That was why the other members of the Yu family dared to bully Yu Shuang on a daily basis. Idiot, Yu Qinglang said, his face darkening. You don't even have the guts to kill someone. He wanted nothing more than to kick Yu Shuang away. What are you all doing? Why are you making such a ruckus? What a scandal. At this moment, an angry roar rang out. A silhouette descended from the sky, and a powerful aura surged out from his body. Suddenly, the martial arts field fell silent. No one dared to make a sound. Uncle is so impressive. Suddenly, Yu Shuang's voice rang out. He looked like a child, looking at Yu Shenglin with admiration and jumping up and down. Yu Shenglin's eyes darkened, and he glared at Yu Shuang. The latter was so frightened that he shrank back, not daring to speak again. Why is he here? Yu Shenglin asked the person behind him, his face dark and cold. Master, didn't you say that you wanted to gather all the direct descendants? The person said in a low voice, looking embarrassed. Idiot, take him away. Yu Shenglin shouted in a cold voice. Although Yu Shuang was also a direct descendant of the Yu family, he was mentally weak. If Nye Tian saw him, wouldn't that be a disgrace to the Yu family? Yes, the person answered, then prepared to take Yu Shuang away. Master Yu, since he's here, let him stay. However, at this moment, Nye Tian's voice rang out, smiling faintly. He descended and landed next to Yu Shenglin. His eyes were fixed on Yu Ji Wushuang, and they shone brightly. Chapter 2467. An enraged voice rang out in the training field. Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. It was Yu Qinglang. Yu Qinglang's face was flushed red. His entire body was filled with rage and murderous intent. He glared at Nye Tian fiercely, as if he wanted to skin the latter alive. Everyone went blank for a moment before coming to their senses and exclaiming in unison, It's him! The 2 sword marks on Yu Qinglang's face were left by a silver-ranked martial artist. Nye Tian happened to be a silver-ranked martial artist. The fact that Yu Qinglang was so enraged meant that Nye Tian was the one who had left the sword marks on his face. You brat, how dare you come to the Yu family? Yu Qinglang let out another roar. His figure flashed as he pounced towards Nye Tian. While in midair, he directly attacked Nye Tian. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment before his lips curled into a smile. He had not expected to meet Yu Qinglang. His attention had been focused on Yu Ji Wushuang, and he had not paid attention to anyone else. How dare you? In the next moment, before Yu Qinglang's attack had even landed, a low, angry roar rang out. Bang! A gust of wind landed. With a dull thud, Yu Qinglang's body flew backward and landed heavily on the ground. Everyone was stunned. Their eyes widened as they were stunned by the scene before them. The person who had attacked Yu Qinglang was none other than the head of the Yu family, Yu Shenglin. However, Yu Shenglin was Yu Qinglang's father. Father, what are you doing? Yu Qinglang crawled up from the ground. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Yu Shenglin in disbelief. It was obvious that Yu Shenglin had only stopped Yu Qinglang and had not hurt him. Little B asterisk starred. I still want to ask, what are you doing? Yu Shenglin's eyes darkened. When he saw the 2 sword marks on Yu Qinglang's face, his expression darkened. With his intelligence, he immediately understood everything. Without a doubt, the sword marks on Yu Qinglang's face were caused by Nie Tian. But now, Nie Tian was an esteemed guest of the Yu family, and Yu Shenglin naturally did not dare to offend him. Not to mention that Nie Tian had only left 2 sword marks on Yu Qinglang's body. Even if he had killed Yu Qinglang, Yu Shenglin might not have dared to say anything. Father, this brat provoked the Yu family, and the sword mark on my face was left by him. Yu Qinglang was completely clueless about the situation, and his face was filled with bitterness, tears almost squeezing out of his eyes. The eyes of the others trembled slightly, and then they looked at Yu Shenglin, waiting for the latter to react. Logically speaking, the current Yu Shenglin should be furious, and then directly kill Nie Tian. Unfilial son, what exactly did you do to make young friend Nie Tian so angry? However, to everyone's surprise, Yu Shenglin's face sank, and he angrily rebuked Yu Qinglang. Everyone was stunned. They stared at each other, not knowing what was going on. Yu Qinglang was also stunned, and his eyes glazed over. He actually said, Father, are you muddle-headed? I am Qinglang. I am your son. This brat left a sword mark on my face. This is an insult to me, to the entire Yu family. Impudent. Yu Shenglin looked at Nie Tian, and then he roared, pointing at Yu Qinglang. You unfilial son, kneel down. Yu Qinglang's eyes trembled, and then he felt an enormous pressure pressing down on him. His knees softened, and he knelt down with a thud. The expressions of the others were extremely shocked, and their eyes were clearly saying, what the F***CK is going on? Yu Shenglin knew that Nie Tian had left a sword mark on Yu Qinglang's face, but he made Yu Qinglang kneel down. Was there really no mistake? Yu Shenglin then looked at Nie Tian, and seeing the latter's ugly expression, he hurriedly bowed and said, Little friend Nie Tian, my son was rash and must have offended little friend Nie Tian. I apologize to little friend Nie Tian on his behalf. Yu Qinglang was his son, and he knew best what kind of person he was. Although Nie Tian was young, he was very steady and not the kind of person who would bully others. Therefore, Yu Shenglin could guess what had happened between Nie Tian and Yu Qinglang. Nie Tian had already given face to the Yu family by not killing Yu Qinglang. Yu Qinglang still couldn't tell north from south and was still thinking of seeking revenge on Nie Tian. His face was really there for others to slap. Patriarch Yu, I won't explain any further. You know what kind of person your son is. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, the Yu family is still one of the 9 great families. It's not good for a Yu family disciple to be so arrogant. If the younger generation of the Yu family is like Yu Qinglang, forgive me for being blunt, but the Yu family's position as one of the 9 great families will soon be lost. His voice was calm, but it was very arrogant. Nie Tian's words seemed to have the intention of teaching Yu Shenglin a lesson. The Yu family members were all stunned, their expressions stiff and lifeless. Yu Shenglin was the patriarch of a great family. For Nie Tian to teach Yu Shenglin a lesson in front of the Yu family members, wasn't this a slap to Yu Shenglin's face? Yu Shenglin smiled awkwardly, his expression extremely ugly. He then looked Yu Qinglang coldly and said in a low voice, Yu Qinglang, do you know your mistake? Yu Qinglang was stunned, his body already drenched in cold sweat. He knelt down and said, "This child knows his mistake." His old man was so timid in front of Nietian. How would he dare to be arrogant? QL11 it's good that you know your mistake. Yu Shenglin said in a low voice, "I will punish you to go into seclusion and reflect on your mistakes for 10 years. Leave." "Yes, yes, yes." Yu Qinglang nodded repeatedly, crawled to his feet, and left in a hurry. Yu Shenglin knew that even if Yu Qinglang stayed, there was no way Nietian would choose him. It would be better to just chase him away. The descendants of the Yu family looked at Yu Qinglang's sorry figure with both shock and embarrassment. They were shocked that just who Nietian was to make Yu Shenglin treat Yu Qinglang so ruthlessly. What embarrassed them the most was that Nietian's lofty status put them to shame. "My young friend Nietian, take a look. All the direct descendants of the Yu family are here." Yu Shenglin nodded with anticipation. Nietian nodded, then began to observe everyone. There were 400 to 500 disciples present, and most of them were over-god cultivators. Only a few were over-gods. Nietian was about to go to another territory, so there was no way he could bring an over-god with him. Therefore, his range of choices was limited to a few dozen over-gods. "Patriarch Yu, are all the direct descendants of the Yu family here?" Nietian asked Yu Shenglin with disappointment after looking around for a long time. "They are all here." Yu Shenglin nodded dejectedly when he saw Nietian's dissatisfaction. "Is he the only one I can choose?" Nietian frowned, and his gaze locked onto Yu Ji Wushuang again. Yu Ji Wushuang was the strongest of all the Yu family descendants present. This was also why Nietian had chosen him at first glance. Unfortunately, Yu Ji Wushuang's mind was incomplete. He seemed to only have the mind of an 8 or 9-year-old child. Nietian was hesitant about whether to bring a cultivator like this. "Friend, are you looking down on the descendants of the Yu family?" At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out, and a figure stepped out, staring at Nietian with a gloomy look in his eyes. Nietian was slightly taken aback, then laughed. "It's not that I'm looking down on you, but you are indeed too weak." His indifferent voice caused all the Yu family disciples present to be filled with indignation. Chapter 2468. All of the Yu clan juniors glared at Nietian angrily and couldn't help but discuss among themselves. "This brat is way too arrogant. I can't believe he's looking down on us." "That's right. He's only a late paramount god. He's not even as strong as Full 9. What kind of skill does this brat have? Even the clan lord is treating him with such respect." The disciples of the Yu clan were all looking at Nietian with unfriendly expressions. However, Nietian didn't care. He wasn't being arrogant. He was just telling the truth. At this point, one of the disciples from the Yu clan stepped forward and challenged Nietian. "If that's the case, brat, do you dare to accept my challenge?" "How impudent!" Yu Shenglin growled. Before Nietian could say anything, he said, "Given your status, what makes you think you're qualified to challenge our young friend Nietian?" The disciple's face went red, and he didn't know what to say. Smiling faintly, Nietian waved his hand dismissively. "If they don't like it, Clan Lord Yu, then they're welcome to challenge me. That said, I won't take advantage of you." Smiling strangely, Nietian said, "Other than the 9 brothers, there are 7 late paramount gods here. Come at me together." "Together?" the disciple blurted, wondering if he had misheard. Nietian was only a late paramount god, and yet he wanted to fight 7 on his own? Was he looking to get killed? "There's no need to hesitate. Let's attack together." Nietian didn't waste any time with words. With a loud laugh, he shot into the sky. "Come at me together," the disciples of the Yu clan said, looking over at Yu Shenglin. Frowning, Yu Shenglin said, "Come at me together." He knew that Nietian was very strong. After all, he was the one who had killed one of the Yu clan patriarchs. But before he could personally witness Nietian's strength, he was still a bit skeptical. Since Nietian had taken the initiative to fight 7 of them, it would be a good opportunity to test Nietian's strength. Yes, the 7 disciples of the Yu family responded in unison. Then, they flew up into the sky and surrounded Nietian. "Stinking brat, you asked for it." One of the Yu family disciples said coldly, his eyes deep and murderous. "Make your move." Nietian didn't give the others a chance to speak and said coldly. These 7 people posed no threat to him, so he couldn't be bothered to waste time. "Brothers, let's kill him together." In the next moment, a low voice sounded, and the 7 Yu family disciples attacked simultaneously. 7 attacks were launched at the same time towards Nietian from all directions. The corners of Nietian's mouth twitched when he sensed the surging impact, and then his figure shook. The sword insight within his entire body rumbled out, and it transformed into 7 sword images that whistled through the air. Bang! 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 In the next moment, a muffled sound was heard, and the 7 figures flew out at the same time. They only managed to stabilize themselves after retreating for thousands of meters. The 7 martial artists were stunned, and they froze on the spot, unable to react for a long time. On the ground, everyone looked at the scene in the sky, and they were all stunned. No words could describe the shock in their hearts. Nietian had directly sent 7 martial artists of the same level flying with just the impact of his sword insight. This strength could be said to be abnormal. Yu Shenglin was completely stunned, and it took him a long time to react. He said in his heart, "This brat's strength is unfathomable." The others might not understand, but Yu Shenglin definitely did. Nietian only released his sword insight and didn't even use his sword. This meant that he didn't use his true strength at all. For a swordsman, there was a huge difference between using and not using a sword. Nietian didn't even use his sword, and he was able to defeat 7 martial artists of the same level. One could imagine how strong he was. QL11 at this moment, Yu Shenglin completely believed that if he and Nietian were to fight to the death, the outcome would definitely be unknown. He was very glad that he had made the right choice earlier. Nietian smiled faintly, and the sword insight on his body disappeared. He landed and returned to Yu Shenglin's side. "Thank you, Nietian, for showing mercy." Yu Shenglin bowed slightly and said respectfully. Nietian had obviously shown mercy. Otherwise, the 7 martial artists would have been dead, even if there were 100 of them. Nietian smiled faintly and didn't say much. Then his eyes locked onto Yuji Wushuang again, and he smiled bitterly in his heart. "It seems that I can only bring this guy along." Boom! However, at this moment, a sudden roar was heard, and a wave of aura shot up into the sky from afar. Nietian looked at the aura in the sky, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. This scene seemed to indicate that someone had come out of seclusion. "It's the 7th brother." Yu Shenglin's eyes trembled, and he cried out in surprise. "Yu Qingqi." The other martial artists of the Yu family were stunned at first, but then they reacted and cried out in surprise. Nietian was stunned, and he frowned slightly. He turned to Yu Shenglin and asked, "Patriarch Yu, who is this?" It seems that he has broken through to the peak paramount god stage. Yu Shenglin's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but introduce excitedly. "Nietian, my young friend, this is my son, Yu Qingqi, who ranks 7th in the Yu family." The 7th brother of the Yu family, Yu Qingqi, was known as the number 1 person in the younger generation of the Yu family. Yu Qingqi had been in seclusion all this time, so he hadn't come out. "Yu Qingqi." Nietian smiled faintly and murmured, "He's pretty strong." Actually, Yu Qingqi was the same age as Nietian's father. It was just that Nietian had advanced so quickly that he had already caught up to most of the martial artists of his father's generation. In fact, he was on the verge of catching up to them. However, even Nietian's father was considered a young martial artist among the God Realm martial artists. It was at this point that a white-robed figure appeared in the sky, his eyes glittering with fierce light as he locked onto the martial arts arena. To be more precise, his gaze was locked onto Nietian. The white-robed figure was none other than Yu Qingqi. Yu Qingqi looked at Nietian with a burning gaze, as if he were very surprised. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the middle of the martial arts arena. When the disciples of the Yu family saw Yu Qingqi's face, they exclaimed, "It really is 7th brother. He has broken through to the peak paramount god level." Yu Ji and Wu Shuang were the only ones who didn't seem convinced. It's just the peak paramount god level, isn't it? I reached that level a long time ago. Unfortunately, everyone was so focused on Yu Qingqi that no one paid any attention to Yu Zhuxuang. Father. Yu Qingqi's figure moved slightly and landed. He bowed slightly towards Yu Shenglin and called out respectfully. You've finally reached the peak paramount god level, Qingqi. As your father, I'm really happy for you. Yu Shenglin laughed heartily. You came out of seclusion at just the right time. There's something I need your help with. What is it? Yu Qingqi asked coolly, his expression calm. Turning to Nie Tian, Yu Shenglin asked excitedly, What do you think of Qingqi, Nie Tian, my young friend? He knew that Nie Tian had gone to look for the myriad with spirit heart to give to the Yu clan. If Yu Qingqi could fuse with it, he would definitely become one of the most powerful experts in the Nine Realms, and the Yu clan's position in the Nine Realms would definitely rise to a higher level. Nie Tian looked at Yu Qingqi, shook his head, and said, I just reached the peak paramount god level, so I'll just have to make do. Chapter 2469. When Yu Qingqi heard Nie Tian's words, his expression turned cold, and his eyes flickered with killing intent. Yu Qingqi was the #1 person in the younger generation of the Yu clan, and had just reached the peak paramount god level. How could he possibly accept someone saying that he was just barely making up for it? Glaring at Nie Tian like a wolf, Yu Qingqi said, Repeat what you just said, boy. Before Nie Tian could say anything, Yu Shenglin took a step forward and said, Qingqi, don't be rude to my young friend Nie Tian. It's fine, Nie Tian said with a cool smile. Waving his hand, he told Yu Shenglin not to get nervous. Then, he turned around to look at Yu Qingqi, smiled faintly, and said, Yu Qingqi, you are known as the #1 of the younger generation in the Yu family, and you are indeed very strong. But unfortunately, in my opinion, you are not strong enough. So let me repeat what I said. You're just barely making up for it. Is that so? Yu Qingqi said, his face so grim that it looked like it might drip blood. Glaring coldly at Nie Tian, he said, I'm curious. You're a late paramount god. What gives you the right to look down on someone whose cultivation level is higher than yours? Strength, Nie Tian said coolly. My words aren't very pleasant to hear, but they're the truth. If you're not happy about it, you can challenge me. You said it yourself, boy. Yu Qingqi said, his eyes blazing with ferocity. He had long since wanted to make a move against Nie Tian, but hadn't dared to do so because of the clan lord. But now, Nie Tian had taken the initiative to challenge him, which was exactly what he wanted. I said it myself, Yang Qi said. A smile tugged at the corner of Nie Tian's mouth as he said, but it would be too much of a bully to fight you alone. Turning to look at Yu Ji and Wu Shuang, he said, How about this? Why don't you join me? Silly nine. Nie Tian's words caused everyone to go blank for a moment before they exclaimed in unison. Who would have thought that Nie Tian would be this arrogant? Just now, he had fought 7 late paramount gods by himself, and now he was going to fight Yu Qingqi and Yu Ji at the same time. Yu Qingqi and Yu Ji were the 2 strongest people in the younger generation of the Yu clan, and they were both peak paramount gods. A late paramount god fighting 2 peak paramount gods at the same time? Wasn't that just courting death? Even though Nie Tian had just defeated 7 late paramount gods, no one believed that he would be able to defeat Yu Qingqi, Yu Ji, and Wu Shuang. After all, Yu Qingqi had only just reached the peak paramount god level, and Yang Qi wasn't that bad. Yu Ji Wu Shuang, on the other hand, was so terrifying that no one knew when he had reached the peak paramount god level. Moreover, very few people had seen Yu Ji in action. They only knew that he was born with divine strength and was extremely powerful. At that moment, Yu Shenglin took a step forward and said with an awkward expression, Nie Tian, my young friend, I don't think that's a good idea. Other people might not know Yu Ji's strength, but he did. Several years ago, for some unknown reason, Yu Ji and Wu Shuang suddenly went berserk. In the end, it was Yu Shenglin who personally subdued them. When he was fighting with Yu Ji and Wu Shuang, Yu Shenglin had already felt strained. Over the past few years, Yu Ji's strength had improved a lot. Therefore, even Yu Shenglin did not dare to say that he would definitely win against Yu Ji. Yu Ji and Wu Shuang were the strongest geniuses in the Yu clan, but it was a pity that they were born with an incomplete mind. Yu Shunlin had sought out many divine alchemists from the 9 major realms, but none of them could cure Yu Ju Shuang. If Yu Ji Wu Shuang was a normal person, the strength of the Yu family would definitely increase greatly because of him. Rest assured, family head Yu, I know what I'm doing. Nie Tian knew what Yu Shunlin was worried about and smiled calmly. At this moment, Yu Qingqi sneered and said, Brat, you sent a fool to fight. You're simply using him to restrain me. Others might not be able to see through this little trick, but how can I not see through it? Nie Tian frowned and could not help but be stunned. He had to admit that this Yu Qingqi was really narcissistic. He actually thought that way. All right, you can think whatever you want. Nie Tian twitched the corner of his mouth and said, Since you don't want help, let's fight. All right, Yu Qingqi roared. Then his body moved and he shot up into the sky. Nie Tian smiled faintly. His body flashed and he arrived in the sky, facing Yu Qingqi. Yu Qingqi stared at Nie Tian coldly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent, and his words were filled with murderous intent. Brat, I will kill you. Make your move. Nie Tian did not want to waste time with Yu Qingqi and said directly, You're courting death. Sensing Nie Tian's disdain, Yu Qingqi was instantly enraged. He let out a wild roar, and his aura surged. His body instantly moved, and cyan divine power surged out of his body. His entire body turned into a beam of cyan light, and he dashed towards Nie Tian. It was obvious that he wanted to use his advantage in strength to kill Nie Tian. Unfortunately, he was completely wrong. Nie Tian's cultivation level was lower than his, but his strength was not lower than his. In the next second, Nie Tian reacted. He did not even look at Yu Qingqi. Starry Sky slash appeared in his hand, and he stabbed. Boom! Instantly, a boundless sword intent condensed, and a sword shadow appeared in the sky like a wild beast. Right at this moment, Yu Qingqi felt boundlessly powerful pressure from the sword, and it caused his eyes to tremble while he actually cried out in surprise. He did not expect that a casual attack from Nie Tian would be so terrifying. This sword intent alone made Yu Qingqi understand that he was no match for Nie Tian. Pung! In the next second, the sword shadow pressed down, and the green energy around Yu Qingqi's body collapsed. After a muffled sound, he was sent flying. When everyone saw the scene in the sky, they all gasped and were stunned. They did not expect Nie Tian to be so powerful. This was the first time they saw Nie Tian use a sword. Even though they were separated by tens of thousands of meters, the huge and sharp sword intent was still shocking. QL11 Nie Tian was too terrifying. It was beyond their imagination. How is this possible? Yu Qingqi steadied himself. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He was not seriously injured. Once again, Nie Tian had shown mercy. If he had used even a little bit of his fire element power or used a random sword move, Yu Qingqi would have already died without a corpse left. It seems that I overestimated you when I said you were barely passable. Nie Tian smiled and said cold, You are not even passable now. After that, Nie Tian turned around and left. At this moment, Yu Qingqi felt a lump of suffocation in his chest. He couldn't breathe it out, and he felt like he was suffocating to death. Go to hell. In the next second, Yu Qingqi did something shocking. After a roar, he moved and attacked Nie Tian again. Nie Tian suddenly felt a cold breeze on his back. He frowned and twitched his mouth. Chapter 2470. Yu Qingqi's sudden attack also shocked the others, and their eyes trembled. Who would have thought that Yu Qingqi would attack again, even though he had clearly lost, and it was a sneak attack? Standing still, Nie Tian didn't even turn his head as he let out a bellow and unleashed a powerful aura. You're courting death. Bang! A muffled sound came from the sky, and Yu Qingqi immediately felt a huge force pressing down on him. His body swayed, and he fell down like a kite with a broken string. Bang! His body landed heavily like a giant rock, and a wave of dust dozens of meters high was stirred up. The Yu family's disciples were completely shocked by the scene in front of them. Their eyes trembled, and their expressions were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Nietian was too terrifying. Even Yu Qingqi couldn't withstand a single wave of his aura. Qingqi. Yu Shenglin finally came back to his senses, and he shouted in shock, and his face turned green. Yu Qingqi was seen by him as the hope of the Yu family's rise, and the next head of the Yu family would definitely be Yu Qingqi. If Yu Qingqi died or was crippled, Yu Shenglin's intestines would turn green with regret. Seventh brother, are you okay? At that moment, a huge figure flashed past and came to Yu Qingqi's side and asked with concern in a low, muffled voice. This figure was none other than Yu Zhuxuang. You fool, get out of my way. Yu Qingqi stood up, but he didn't appreciate it, and instead scolded Yu Zhuxuang. Yu Zhuxuang's huge figure paused, and he became a yes man, not daring to go near Yu Qingqi. Seeing this, Nietian couldn't help but frown, and he thought to himself, this guy is really unreasonable. He's so cruel to his own brother. Just now, Nietian could have killed Yu Qingqi, but he didn't because he didn't want to have any conflict with the Yu family. Yu Shenglin treated Yu Qingqi like a treasure, and if the latter died, Yu Shenglin would probably be furious. Seeing that Yu Qingqi was fine, Yu Shenglin's heart was finally at ease. Thank you, little friend Nietian, for showing mercy. Yu Shenglin hurried to Nietian's side and bowed to express his gratitude. Nietian nodded, then turned his gaze to Yu Wuxuang and asked, Patriarch Yu, what is this brother's name? Yu Shenglin was stunned for a moment. He was puzzled. Could it be that Nietian really wanted to bring Yu Ji and Wuxuang along? Yu Wuxuang was indeed powerful, but his mind was not complete. He was no different from a fool. Little friend Nietan, his name is Yu Wuxuang, and he is ranked 9th among the younger generation of the Yu clan. Yu Shenglin thought for a while, then said, Nietian, you must have noticed that Wuxuang is a little immature, so Yu Wuxuang, what a good name. Nietian didn't wait for Yu Shenglin to finish before he nodded and said heavily. The Yu family disciples were stunned and looked at Nietian in confusion. Until now, they still didn't know why Nietian chose the Yu family disciples. However, it was quite surprising that Nietian chose a fool in the end. Little friend Nietian, this. Yu Shenglin didn't expect that Nietian would really choose Yu Wuxuang. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. He knew that Nietian was looking for the spiritual heart of all trees. Was he going to let a fool integrate the spiritual heart of all trees? Patriarch Yu, you said before that I can choose anyone in the Yu family except you, Nietian said with a faint smile, looking at Yu Shenglin. Nietian, my young friend, I did say something like that, Yu Shenglin said with a grim expression, but Wuxuang he's a fool. In the end, Yu Shenglin said that Yu Wuxuang was a fool. Uncle, Wuxuang is not a fool. Before Nietian could speak, Yu Wuxuang shouted in a low voice, looking very angry. He seemed to think that others could call him a fool, but the patriarch couldn't. Yu Shenglin was stunned for a moment, and his old face became even darker. Patriarch Yu, I think this brother Wuxuang is not a fool. I will bring him along this time, Nietian said with a faint smile, looking determined. Yu Shenglin's face darkened. He knew that he couldn't change Nietian's mind. He could only look at Yu Wuxuang and asked, Wuxuang, are you willing to follow Lord Nietian to look for the spiritual heart of all trees? The spiritual heart of all trees. The Yu family disciples were stunned, and their eyes instantly became burning. They didn't expect that Nietian was going to bring people to look for the spiritual heart of all trees. The spiritual heart of all trees? Yu Wuxuang was stunned. He shook his head and said, What is it? Can it be eaten? Is it delicious? As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd roared with laughter. The spiritual heart of all trees was a wood elemental source power, but Yu Wuxuang treated it as food. He was really a fool. Wuxuang, the spiritual heart of all trees, is not something to eat. It is a powerful force. Yu Shenglin's old face darkened, and he scolded, You don't need to know too much. You only need to answer me. Are you willing to go with Lord Nietian? No. This time, Yu Ji Wushuang understood. He shook his head vigorously and said, "You're not willing?" The crowd was shocked, and they looked at Yu Ji Wushuang speechlessly. They were going to look for the spiritual heart of all trees, and Yu Ji Wushuang was actually unwilling to go with them. All the Yu family disciples present, including Yu Qingqi, were eager to go with Nie Tian. Yu Xinglin was also stunned, and he couldn't help but ask why not. He. Suddenly, Yu Ji Wushuang looked at Nie Tian, and with a silly smile, he said, "If he can beat me, I'll go with him." Nie Tian frowned, and then couldn't help but smile. Yu Ji Wushuang didn't think Nie Tian was a match for him, so he didn't want to go with Nie Tian. "Nonsense!" Yu Xinglin roared. "Who do you think you are? You don't deserve to fight Lord Nie Tian." This time, Yu Ji Wushuang wasn't afraid. He said seriously, "I'm a peak paramount god, and he's only a late paramount god. My status is higher than his." Yu Xinglin was stunned. He was so angry at Yu Ji Wushuang that he couldn't speak. QL 11-inch Patriarch Yu. Since Wushuang wants to test my strength, I can't refuse. At this time, Nie Tian smiled, then looked at Yu Ji Wushuang and said, "Wushuang, please." "All right." Yu Ji Wushuang was very excited. He stamped his feet, causing cracks to appear on the ground as he shot up into the sky. With a faint smile, Nie Tian blurred into action and flew high into the sky, where he stood opposite Yu Ji and Wushuang. Everyone's eyes were shining brightly as they looked up at the two figures in the sky. Obviously, they were looking forward to the fight. Nie Tian had already displayed shocking battle prowess, and Yu Ji Wushuang's strength was also very frightening. Although Yu Ji Wushuang was a fool, all the members of the Yu clan knew that he was stronger than Yu Qingqi. Therefore, the battle between Nie Tian and Yu Ji Wushuang would be very difficult to predict. Looking at Nie Tian and Yu Ji Wushuang, Yu Xinglin frowned slightly and thought to himself, "Nie Tian, are you really a match for Wushuang?" He guessed that Yu Ji Wushuang's strength was definitely comparable to the peak of the former. Chapter 2471. High up in the sky, two figures stood tall and proud. Nie Tian's eyes shone as he looked at Yu Ji Wushuang with a smile. He also wanted to know exactly how strong Yu Ji Wushuang was. Yu Ji Wushuang chuckled, and a layer of gray aura surged around him. It was very strange. Nie Tian frowned. He felt that Yu Ji Wushuang's aura was very strange. It was not pure wood-based power, but seemed to contain some kind of rock-based power. "Kid, I'll let you make 3 moves first," Yu Ji Wushuang shouted, looking unconcerned. He wasn't being arrogant, but he really thought that Nie Tian was a kid, so he would let him make a few moves first. "Sure." With a faint smile, Nie Tian blurred into motion and threw a punch out. A fist shadow that was as heavy as a mountain shot towards Yu Ji and Wushuang. Yu Ji Wushuang chuckled, but he didn't move. QL 11 bang. The next moment, the fist shadow landed heavily on Yu Ji Wushuang's body, but it shattered. Yu Ji Wushuang stood there like an old tree rooted to the ground, not moving an inch. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he saw this. He was quite surprised. Although the punch just now wasn't very strong, it was enough to threaten an ordinary peak paramount god. If his opponent had been Yu Qingqi, the latter would probably have been injured. But Yu Ji Wushuang didn't react at all. His martial body was very strong. But Yu Ji Wushuang didn't react at all. His martial body was very strong. Although they usually bullied Yu Ji Wushuang, at this moment, they hoped that Yu Ji Wushuang could win and regain some face for the Yu clan. This fool is indeed not simple. Yu Qingqi looked at Yu Ji Wushuang, shocked, but his face was very unsightly. He was known as the #1 of the Yu clan's younger generation, but he wasn't the strongest. Of course, this wasn't a good feeling. "Kid, is this all you've got? It's not even enough to tickle me." Ha ha ha. Yu Ji Wushuang was very proud of himself, and he laughed loudly. "Is that so?" The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as his aura surged. His silhouette flickered as he shouted in a low voice, "Divine War Emperor Fist." Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Nie Tian punched out. His aura instantly gathered, and a golden fist shadow appeared. It was like a golden dragon, pressing down on Yu Ji Wushuang. However, Yu and Wushuang still did not move. They were prepared to take this punch head-on. Boom! The next moment, the golden fist descended and landed on Wushuang's body. His body trembled slightly, and he could not help but take a few steps back. However, he immediately steadied himself. Tian's punch caused Wushuang to take a few steps back, but that was all. This guy, what a strong martial body. Tian frowned, unable to conceal the surprise in his eyes. Yuji's unparalleled martial body was indeed strong enough. He took two of Tian's punches head-on and was not injured at all. Terrifying. The crowd below gasped in shock when they saw this. Yuji's unparalleled strength was beyond their expectations. This time, even Yu Shenglin was slightly moved. He thought that even if he had taken Tian's punch head-on, it would not have been so easy. "Kid, your punch is not bad, but it is not enough," Wushuang said proudly as he patted the dust off his body. "Good, then I will show you my third punch." Tian's lips curled up into a smile. Then his body shook, and his whole body released a terrifying dragon chi. The surrounding space shook slightly, as if it was about to be torn apart. Roar! The next moment, Tian punched out, and the shadow of a dragon whistled out. The dragon's roar shook the sky, and it carried with it an unparalleled dragon might as it pressed down. Wushuang felt a huge pressure in an instant, and his eyes could not help but tremble. Then, a layer of dust appeared all over his body, wrapping him up, making him look like a human-shaped stone. Bang! Then, the shadow of the dragon fell, and there was a muffled sound. Wushuang's body trembled, and he retreated hundreds of meters, but then he stood still again. This time, he was not as relaxed as before. His face was a little red, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. When the crowd saw the scene in the sky, they could not help but gasp, and their faces instantly became nervous. The power of Tian's punch was obviously much more powerful, and had directly injured Wushuang. Yu Shenglin's eyes trembled, and he was extremely surprised. He had not expected that Tian's body could release such a huge amount of dragon chi. "Kid, you are serious." Wushuang, who was high up in the sky, was angry. He roared, and then his body moved at an extremely fast speed. He was like the wind and lightning, and he attacked Tian. Boom, boom, boom. His fighting style was very simple. He just punched and kicked. Feeling Wushuang's momentum, Tian could not help but retreat again and again. He did not take the latter's attack head-on. Instead, he defended 30% and dodged 70%. It had to be said that Wushuang's power was really powerful. Even though it was just a simple punch and a kick, every time he attacked, the void space would tremble. What was even more strange was that a layer of stone-like substance had formed around Wushuang's body. His whole body was wrapped in it, and he looked like a stone man. Moreover, the aura all over his body was constantly increasing, as if he was about to go crazy. Tian was forced to retreat again and again by Wushuang, and his expression became more and more strange. He could faintly feel that as Wushuang's power became stronger, his consciousness became weaker and weaker. Boom, boom. In the void space, two muffled sounds were heard. Tian's figure suddenly retreated, and he put some distance between himself and Wushuang. Ah! Wushuang roared angrily, and like a wild beast, he rushed toward Tian. Oh no! Yu Shenglin, who was below, saw this scene, and his face instantly darkened. He shouted in his heart, "Wushuang is going to lose control." This was not the first time that Wushuang had lost control. Every time he lost control, he would cause a huge commotion. Yu Shenglin's face revealed a horrified expression. He even suspected that if Wushuang completely lost control, he would not be a match for him. Tian resisted and retreated at the same time, maintaining a distance from Wushuang. At this moment, Fat Cat's voice suddenly rang out, and she shouted in surprise, "This is the body of Earth Rock." Body of Earth Rock? Tian was stunned. He had never heard of such a martial body before. The two strongest martial bodies of the Earth attribute are the body of heavenly stone, and the other is the body of earth rock. Fat Cat calmed down and explained hurriedly. Heavenly stone, earth rock. Nyetion's eyes narrowed, and he immediately thought of something. He was very unfamiliar with the body of earth rock, but he was very familiar with the body of heavenly stone. He had a disciple who had the body of heavenly stone. Back in the Sumru world of the plain world, Nyetion had once accepted a disciple named Han Tion, who had the body of heavenly stone. It was rumored that when the body of heavenly stone was cultivated to the extreme, it could reach the state of immortality and indestructibility. Since the body of earth rock and the body of heavenly stone were equally famous, it was definitely not weaker than the body of heavenly stone. Yuji Wushuang's strength was already at the peak of the supreme god level, and the power he could exert with the body of earth rock was very strong. Chapter 2472. The martial bodies of the Yu family were usually of the wood element. How could there be someone with an earth element martial body? Nyetion, you must stop him immediately. If he continues to be arrogant, his divine sense will collapse. At this time, the fat cat's voice sounded again, and it sounded very panicked. Nyetion did not ask too much. His whole body's aura soared, and endless power of the stars gushed out. Boundless starlight fell like a falling galaxy, dazzling and brilliant. Sky-shrouding totem, come out. Then, Nyetion released the sky-shrouding totem, which was like a giant starlight net, covering Yuji Wushuang. Break it! Yuji Wushuang roared and punched. The fist shadow was like a dragon, bombarding the sky-shrouding totem and creating a huge gap. Seeing this, Nyetion could not help but tremble. Yuji Wushuang's power was stronger than he had imagined. Then, Nyetion controlled the sky-shrouding totem. It rolled layer by layer and suddenly closed, trapping Yuji Wushuang within. Let go of me! Yuji Wushuang roared furiously, releasing all the power in his body. The whole sky-shrouding totem shook violently, as if it would collapse at the next moment. Nyetion's eyes narrowed slightly. Without hesitation, his body shook, and several bone-eroding, soul-shackling chains appeared and shot out. Before Yuji Wushuang could react, he was firmly bound by the bone-eroding soul-shackling chains and could no longer move. The people below were completely stunned by the scene in front of them, and their eyes were trembling. Who would have thought that Nyetion would have such a heaven-defying method? Yuji Wushuang was bound by the bone-eroding soul-shackling chains, enduring the burning of the soul-refining flame. He suddenly let out a heart-wrenching howl. Nyetion, my little friend, have mercy. Yu Xinglin's face was green with fear. His figure moved, and he came to the sky, shouting loudly. Nyetion nodded. Then suddenly, the bone-eroding soul-shackling chains tightened. Yuji Wushuang could no longer bear it and directly passed out. Seeing this, Nyetion immediately withdrew the bone-eroding soul-shackling chains and the heaven-shrouding totem. Yu Xinglin moved and held Yu Zhuoxuang in his arms. Little friend Nyetion, let's talk about this later. Yu Xinglin said. With a flash, he left. Nyetion exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His figure landed, but he didn't stop. Together with Jun Aoqing, he returned to the Jade Mansion's lobby. Nyetion, are you okay? Jun Aoqing looked at Nyetion with some worry and asked. Nyetion shook his head and smiled, indicating that he was fine. What happened just now was a little strange. Why did Yuji and Wushuang suddenly lose control? Could it be that all martial artists with the body of earth rock would lose control? Nyetion, that big guy definitely has the body of earth rock. At that moment, the fat cat's voice rang out. I think that the reason why he's mentally unstable is because of the pressure from the body of earth's rock. What do you mean? Nyetion was stunned and puzzled. Han Tion had the body of heavenly stone, but he didn't seem to be suppressed by the body of heavenly stone. Could it be that the body of earth rock was completely different from the body of heavenly stone? The body of earth rock itself doesn't have any disadvantages. It won't suppress a martial artist's mind, the fat cat frowned and said, but the key is that that guy has the divine body of all wood. When Yetian heard the fat cat's words, his eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he exclaimed, "Divine body of all wood." He was no stranger to this kind of bloodline martial body. Not long ago, Yu Li, whom he killed in the dark prison, had the divine body of all wood. He really didn't expect Yu Shuang to be so powerful. He was actually a martial artist with a double bloodline martial body. The divine body of all wood was the peak of the wood attribute martial body, and the body of earth rock was the strongest martial body of the earth attribute. It was no wonder that Yu Shuang's martial body was so powerful. The myriad wood divine body and the body of earth rock, any one of these two bloodline martial bodies is extremely powerful. The fat cat nodded and continued. Now, they actually appeared on that guy's body at the same time. This is very scary. These two martial bodies, one is of the wood attribute, and the other is of the earth attribute. There is no repulsion between the two attributes of earth and wood. Instead, they are very compatible. Therefore, when the divine body of all wood and the body of earth rock are combined, there is a situation where 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Therefore, that guy's martial body is definitely very powerful. Because of this, his mind was suppressed, and in the end, his mind was not complete. If this guy was a person with a complete mind, with his age and talent, he would at least be at the peak of the divine state. He might even have broken through the boundary limit and reached the strength of a half-step saint. After listening to the fat cat, Nietian couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He didn't expect Yu Shuang to be so abnormal. After a moment of silence, Nietian couldn't help but ask, "Fat, do you have a way to restore Yu Shuang to a normal person's mind?" It was really sad to see such a talented martial artist ruined because of his incomplete mind. Yes, the fat cat's eyes trembled slightly. Unless you let that guy merge the spiritual heart of all wood and the vein of the earth at the same time, using the two kinds of origin power to attack his martial body and release his suppressed mind. Actually, his mind is sound. It's just that it is suppressed by the two martial bodies and can't be released. Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his face stiffened. The spiritual heart of all wood and the vein of the earth were two kinds of origin power. If they were merged into Yu Shuang's body at the same time, how powerful would this guy be? The most important thing was that Nietian's time was limited. After finding the spiritual heart of all wood, he could merge it into Yu Shuang's body. But then, would he have to take Yu Shuang to find the vein of the earth? Thinking of this, Nietian hesitated. He was not a noble person. If he had nothing else to do, he could help Yu Shuang. But now he had a big mess on his hands. He really did not have extra time to help others. QL 11-inch Nietian, don't think too much. Just take it one step at a time, the fat cat said with a faint smile. She knew what Nietian was thinking. Nietian nodded slightly. This was the only way. At this time, Yu Shenglin and Yu Qingqi appeared. The two of them quickly walked into the hall. "My little friend Nietian, sorry to keep you waiting." Yu Shenglin entered the hall and cupped his hands at Nietian. He apologized sincerely. Nietian stood up and smiled faintly. Then he asked, "How is Yu Shuang?" "He is still unconscious, but his breathing is stable." "He is fine now," Yu Shenglin said with a nod. Yu Shenglin nodded. Then his eyes flashed. He looked at Nietian and said, "My little friend Nietian, you saw it too. Although Wu Shuang is very powerful, he easily loses control when he is agitated and angry. If you take him with you, not only will he not be able to help you, but he will also become a burden." After much consideration, the most suitable candidate right now is Qingqi. As he spoke, Yu Shenglin gave Yu Qingqi a look. Although Yu Qingqi was very reluctant, he still walked forward. He bowed deeply at Nietian and said, "I am willing to follow Lord Nietian to find the spiritual heart of all wood. Lord Nietian, please give me a chance." Chapter 2473. Nietian smiled faintly. His gaze swept across Yu Shenglin and Yu Qingqi, but he did not say anything. How could he not see what the father and son of the Yu family were planning? It was obvious that they had their eyes on the spiritual heart of all wood. Yu Shenglin knew very well that whoever went with Nie Tian would have the opportunity to fuse with the spiritual heart of all wood. Although Yu Shuang and Yu Qingqi were both in the Yu family, their relationship with Yu Shenglin was, of course, different. Yu Shuang was Yu Shenglin's nephew, while Yu Qingqi was his son. This was definitely different. Therefore, Yu Shenglin wanted to seize this opportunity and let his son, Yu Qingqi, go with Nie Tian. Nie Tian, my young friend, what do you think? Yu Shenglin could not help but ask again. Seeing that Nie Tian was not saying anything, his expression became slightly awkward. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Clan Master Yu, I don't think I need to tell you how great the gap in strength between Yu Qingqi and Yu Shuang is. Before, I thought Yu Qingqi was just barely strong enough. However, after I fought him, I felt that he couldn't even be considered to be passable. Tell me, isn't he also a burden if I bring him with me? Hearing Nie Tian's words, Yu Shenglin's expression became extremely ugly, and he was momentarily speechless. Yu Qingqi's face was scrunched up. He was very angry, but he did not dare to say anything. He had personally experienced Nie Tian's strength, and he indeed had the right to say that. Patriarch Yu, how about this? At this moment, Nie Tian spoke again. He smiled faintly and said, I will bring Yu Shuang and Yu Qingqi with me. Together? Yu Shenglin was stunned, and his face was full of surprise. He did not expect Nie Tian to say this at all. One burden is a burden, and two burdens are also burdens. There is no difference. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said seriously. Yu Qingqi's face turned as red as an eggplant when he heard Nie Tian's words. He was a top genius of the Yu family. Why did he become a burden in Nie Tian's words? If that's the case, that's fine. Yu Shenglin looked helpless. Then his eyes flashed, and he asked, Nie Tian, if you find the spiritual heart of all wood, which one of them will fuse with it? Nie Tian smiled and said, It doesn't matter who fuses with it. They are both in the Yu family. This, Yu Shenglin's face froze, and he was suddenly speechless. Lord Yu Shenglin did not know what to say. We'll leave as soon as Yu Ji and Wu Shuang wake up, Nie Tian said with a faint smile, not looking at Yu Shenglin's expression. The faces of Yu Shenglin and Yu Qingqi stiffened, looking as ugly as one could imagine. If Yu Qingqi couldn't fuse with the all-wood spirit heart, why would he accompany Nie Tian on this dangerous journey? If Yu Qingqi could not fuse with the spiritual heart of all wood, why would he accompany Nie Tian on this dangerous journey? Yu Shenglin looked at Nie Tian's back and said to Yu Qingqi in a low voice, Qingqi, remember what I said. No matter what happens, do not have any conflict with Nie Tian. I will remember. Yu Qingqi nodded his head, but there was a strange glint in his eyes. Half a day later, Yu Qingqi and Yu Qingqi woke up. Nie Tian did not waste any more time and left immediately. Outside Yufeng City, Nie Tian and the others were getting further and further away. Yu Shenglin looked at them with worry in his eyes. He had a feeling that Yu Qingqi would not listen to him. However, it was too late to say anything now. Yu Qingqi had already left with Nie Tian. 2 days later, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the extreme north of the God-forbidding region. They were standing outside a long and narrow canyon. Passing through this canyon, they would be able to enter the connecting area between the God-forbidding region and the frozen ruins. Lord Nie Tian, what are we doing here? Yu Qingqi looked at the canyon in front of him and could not help asking with a puzzled expression. You don't need to know why. Nie Tianling responded coldly. His brows were tightly knitted, hesitating whether to enter the canyon in front of him or not. Nie Tian, have you discovered it? Zhu Naoqing saw Nie Tian's strange expression. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she transmitted her voice to ask. Nie Tian nodded and said with a bitter smile, These people have been following us all the way, but have not made a move. They are waiting for the best time. If we enter this canyon, it will be the best time for them to make a move. As soon as Nie Tian left Jade Maple City, he discovered that someone had been following them. But he did not want to pay attention to these people, so he did not say anything. He did not expect that these people were so persistent. They actually followed them for 3 days and came here. Nie Tian, are we entering the canyon? Jun Aoqing turned to look at Nietian and asked hesitantly. This canyon in front of them was a place they had to pass through to enter the connecting area between the two realms. If Nietian chose to take a detour, he would waste at least a day. If they passed through the air, they would encounter high-intensity space-time vortexes. It was very dangerous. A place at the limits of a realm like this was very dangerous to begin with. Very few people set foot in it. Enter. Nietian did not hesitate and spat out a word. He did not have time to play games with these people. It was better to enter the canyon directly and let those people show themselves automatically. Saying this, Nietian directly stepped out and entered the canyon. Jun Aoqing, Yu Ji, Wu Shuang, and Yu Qingqi immediately followed. The moment the four of them entered the canyon, they felt a bone-chilling wind hit them in the face. The entire canyon exuded a kind of eerie aura. Nietian looked up. On both sides of the canyon were cliffs, so high that the top could not be seen. Only the front and the back could be entered. It was truly a dangerous place. The fog in the canyon was very thick. Nietian and the others did not dare to move too fast. Just when they were about 10,000 meters away, dozens of auras came from behind them. The tail is here. Nietian smiled faintly. He steadied himself and signaled Jun Aoqing and the others to be vigilant. Who is it? Yu Qingqi could not hold back his temper. Sensing that there was someone behind him, he immediately roared. The person who wants your life. Immediately, a low voice came from the thick fog. Boom! In the next instant, a vigorous energy appeared. Like a dragon breaking out of the abyss, it roared out and attacked Yu Qingqi. Oh no! Yu Qingqi could not help but exclaim when he felt the powerful energy rushing towards him. His small face turned pale. He could feel that the person who attacked him was definitely an expert at the peak of the half-step realm. He could not block this attack at all. Seventh brother, I'm coming to save you. At this moment, a voice was heard. Immediately, a huge figure stepped out. He straightened his chest and took the attack in the air. Bang! Immediately, the terrifying attack fell heavily on Yu Ji Wushuang's body. However, he took the attack head-on. A surprise voice came from the thick fog. The person who attacked obviously did not expect Yu Ji Wushuang to be able to block his attack so easily. The next moment, Nietian stepped out and said in a low voice with a cold smile, Come out. I know who you are. Little Nya, you escaped last time. This time, you won't be so lucky. Immediately, a low voice came from the thick fog. Then, a figure in black slowly walked out. It really is you, Rin Quanshen. Nietian saw the face of the figure in black clearly. His eyes darkened, and he shouted the person's name. It turned out that the person who had been following Nietian was none other than the former deputy alliance leader of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, Rin Quanshen. Nietian did not expect that Rin Quanshen's desire to kill him was so strong. As expected, he could follow him all the way here. Chapter 2474. Nie Tianling looked at Ren Quanshen coldly, his eyes cold and murderous. He didn't expect this guy to chase him all the way here. Ren Quanshen stared at Nie Tian with his eagle-like eyes and said coldly, Nie brat, I'm afraid you already knew that someone was following you. I can't believe you still dared to enter this valley. It seems that you're prepared to die. Ren Quanshen, are you really that confident that you'll be able to kill me? Nie Tian sneered, his eyes filled with disdain. Stinking brat, you're about to die, yet you still dare to be so insolent. Ren Quanshen roared and ordered, attack. Yes. The dozens of black-clad martial artists responded in unison, their voices like thunder resounding in the canyon. The next moment, dozens of figures moved at the same time, their auras surging out. They linked together, and a terrible attack came crashing down like a landslide or tsunami. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he retreated slightly, shielding Jun ouching behind him. Right at this moment, a figure dashed out. Like a ferocious beast, he charged forth to kill. Nie Tian was stunned. When he saw that the figure was Yu Ji Wushuang, he couldn't help but shout, Yu Ji Wushuang. Most of the black-clad martial artists were late-stage paramount gods, and a few were peak paramount gods. When they joined forces, their power was no weaker than a half-step peak expert. The most troublesome thing was that Rin Quanshun was watching from the side. It was too reckless for Yu Ji Wushuang to rush over. Bang! 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 Yu Ji Wushuang's body surged with the power of rocks, and his body was wrapped in a layer of rocks. He looked like a wild beast as he broke through the attacks of the black-clad martial artists. When the dozens of black-clad martial artists saw this, they were stunned, their faces filled with horror. They never thought that this blockhead would be so powerful. "You're courting death." On the other side, Rin Quanshun's face darkened when he saw Yu Ji Wushuang's ferocity. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he suddenly struck out with his palm. Rolling palm energy exploded, pressing down on Yu Ji Wushuang. Boom! Almost at the same time that Rin Quanshun struck, a fist shadow appeared in the air, blocking his palm. QL-11 Yetion's figure froze in midair as he stared coldly at Rin Quanshun. He said in a disdainful tone, "Rin Quanshun, you're a famous expert, yet you actually sneak attacked a junior. How shameless!" Compared to winning or losing, what is shame? Rin Quanshun growled, but the way he looked at Yetion was a little strange. Obviously, he did not expect Yetion's strength to increase a little in just a few days. Yetion laughed. He didn't feel like talking nonsense with Rin Quanshun and said in a deep voice, "Make your move." Yu Ji Wushuang was extremely ferocious. He alone was enough to hold back the dozens of black-robed cultivators. Jun Aoqing was not weak either, so she could help. As for Yu Qingqi, he only needed to protect himself. "Little brat, yeah, your strength is indeed astonishing. However, it's a pity that you're too terrifying and shouldn't exist in this world." Rin Quanshun said in a cold voice. His whole body's aura rose sharply, and the cliffs on both sides were impacted and actually began to crack. "Is this why you want to kill me?" Nie Tianling replied with a smile. "It seems that you're now a member of the Holy Parliament. Nie Tian, you're very smart." Rin Quanshun smiled and said, "As long as I kill you, I can become the vice president of the Holy Parliament. When Lord Huijioshan comes out, the entire 9 major domains will belong to the Holy Parliament. And as the vice president of the Holy Parliament, I can control at least 3 major domains. Isn't that much better than a mere vice alliance leader of Fengyan?" As he spoke, Rin Quanshun laughed wildly. Obviously, he was immersed in his own fantasies. The vice president of the Holy Parliament, Nie Tian laughed, and the corners of his mouth turned cold and murderous. He said in a deep voice, "You'll have to be alive to do it." "Arrogant!" Rin Quanshun roared, and his figure moved instantly. His whole body's aura was like a mountain, and he directly struck out with his palm. Palm shadows rolled out, causing the space to shake. "Nie Tian, watch out!" Jun Aoqing saw this scene from afar, and her beautiful eyes flickered as she cried out. Feeling the pressure coming towards him, Nie Tian's expression changed slightly. Starlight Heaven Slash appeared in his hand, and his whole body released a wild sword as he stabbed out with his sword. Boom! In the next instant, the palm shadow and the sword shadow collided, and the space shook violently. A shockwave visible to the naked eye surged out, and deep ravines appeared on the cliffs on both sides. Nie Tian's figure was affected, and he couldn't help but retreat. At this moment, Rin Quanshun's figure once again pressed down, and he struck out with his palm again. Boom! 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 As the palm fell, countless terrifying palm shadows appeared in the air, and like a dense rain of arrows, they bombarded towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian didn't panic in the face of danger, and his whole body sword will surged, forming a shield of starlight sword will around him. Boom! 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 The palm shadows landed on the shield of starlight sword will, and Nie Tian kept retreating. After all, Rin Quanshun was an expert at the peak of the half-step, and his strength was much stronger than Nie Tian's. In a head-on battle like this, Nie Tian was at a disadvantage. Relying on a shield of starlight sword will, Nie Tian blocked the countless palm shadows, but he couldn't stop retreating. In the blink of an eye, he was forced to the edge of the cliff, and there was nowhere to retreat. "Young man, go to hell." Seeing this, Rin Quanshan's lips curled up in a cold smile, and his whole body released waves of dark aura, which condensed into a giant black python, which was abnormally huge, and its momentum could swallow the sky. The power of blood meridians again. Nietion's eyes suddenly trembled, and he had a bad feeling in his heart. Previously, when he fought with Rin Quanshan, the latter had used this kind of power, and it was very terrifying. At this moment, the giant black python suddenly flicked its tongue, and its body rolled out. Like a moving giant black mountain, it crazily pressed down on Nietion. Nietion frowned and immediately reacted. In his body, the 9 dragon veins revolved wildly, and waves of dragon energy were released crazily. The giant red dragon appeared again. Roar! The giant dragon appeared again, and its roar shook the sky. Rumble! The next moment, in midair above the canyon, a giant red dragon and a giant black python collided with a loud bang. Suddenly, endless wild power surged, and countless sharp blades formed in the air, wreaking havoc in the space. Hiss, hiss, hiss! An ear-piercing sound came from the air, and under the impact of the wild power, the cliffs on both sides were torn apart bit by bit, and then collapsed. The figures of Nietion and Rin Quanshan were completely out of sight, and they were swallowed by the endless wild wolves. Below, Yu Wushuang and dozens of martial artists in black all stood there in a daze, and the shock in their hearts was perfectly written on their faces. Yu Qingqi was even more shocked, and he completely turned into a stone statue. He completely couldn't imagine that Nietion could actually fight with a powerful martial artist like Rin Quanshan head-on. Nietion was really too terrifying. After a while, the wild power in the air dissipated, and the figures of Nietion and Rin Quanshan appeared. Rin Quanshan stood in midair, and his whole body was still full of fierce and murderous aura. Looking at Nietion, he was covered in blood, and it seemed that he was seriously injured. Chapter 2475. There was no doubt that in this head-on confrontation, Nietion was still slightly inferior. Nietion. Jun Aoqing saw that Nietion was injured, and her beautiful eyes could not help but tremble, and she could not help but scream. Nietion's body shook, and the bloodstains on his body were washed away. His aura was as fierce as before, and he did not suffer any serious injuries. "I'm fine." He glanced at Jun Aoqing and said lightly, "Nietion, let Jun Aoqing prepare in advance and leave this place." But at this moment, Fat Cat's voice suddenly sounded, and it was very nervous, as if it had noticed something. "Fat, what happened?" Nietion could hear that Fat Cat was very nervous and could not help but ask. "Don't ask too much. Let's stall this guy first. Don't kill him." Fat Cat did not explain too much, but there was unconcealable nervousness in its voice, and even a little panic. Nietion had a puzzled look and did not know what Fat Cat had discovered to actually be so nervous. He did not ask too much, but secretly transmitted to Jun Aoqing and said, "Aoqing, use your sword to open a space-time tunnel. We're ready to leave." Jun Aoqing was stunned for a moment, and then immediately understood, but she did not make a sound and secretly released the sword while in her body. "Nietion, it seems that I has underestimated you. You're stronger than before." Rin Quanshan saw that Nietion did not suffer any serious injuries, and at first he was stunned, and then his eyes revealed a cold look. "You have underestimated me more than a little." Nietion laughed, but he was not in a hurry to attack. Fat Cat let him stall with Rin Quanshan and buy time for Jun Aoqing. "Nietion, you deserve I to use my true strength." But Rin Quanshan did not intend to talk nonsense with Nietion, and his eyes flashed, and a terrible power surged from his body. This guy is going to use his real killer move. Nietion's gaze trembled. He could feel that Rin Quanshan's aura was much stronger than before, and he couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. He had witnessed this scene the last time, but then Nie Dao came and scared Rin Quanshan away. But this time, Nietion didn't have any experts to protect him. "All right." In the next moment, Nietion's gaze was fixed, and his eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he growled, "Since you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. I want to see exactly how strong you are." The black python that Rin Quanchen had conjured earlier was clearly the power of his bloodline. At this moment, he seemed to have fused the power of his bloodline with some kind of evil art. This strange fusion caused his strength to increase by a lot. Nietion's entire body surged with sword intent. At the same time, his blood energy surged in the air. The fiend god energy in his nascent embryo space was like a ferocious tiger lurking in ambush. "Little brat, watch carefully." At this moment, Rin Quanchen's aura skyrocketed to its peak. He let out a roar, and the black python appeared behind him. Then, the strangest scene took place. The black python's body suddenly split open, and 4 claws grew out of its body, like the arms of a dragon. On the top of the python's head, 2 dragon horns grew out, and dragon whiskers grew out of its lips. In the blink of an eye, the black python had transformed into a black dragon. This is Ai's strongest secret skill. Normally, I would only use it when I'm fighting against a top-tier expert. I didn't expect to use it on you today. Rin Quanchen said in a deep voice, and his eyes were extremely cold. He said in a deep voice, "Little brat, it's your honor to be killed by this skill. You should die without regrets." As soon as he finished speaking, the black dragon behind Rin Quanchen moved, and its enormous body rolled forward. Its giant dragon tail swept across, and a crack appeared on the cliff beside it, as if it was about to collapse. After Rin Quanchen activated his secret skill, his strength was close to that of a top-tier godly state expert. Nietion estimated that Rin Quanchen's current strength should be at the level of Nangong Dushio, or Earth Chief. Would Nietion be able to withstand such a terrifying attack? "Let's go all out." In an instant, Nietion's eyes were not filled with fear, but with a violent fighting spirit. His sword intent exploded, and under the stimulation of his vital energy, his strength skyrocketed to its peak. Human sword cutting stars. In the next instant, his face sank, and his eyes were resolute. There was no ripple in his eyes, only the purest fighting spirit. At this moment, Nietion felt that he had entered a mysterious state, and everything around him seemed to have ceased to exist. In the entire world, there was only him and his sword intent. Die! Right at this moment, Rin Quanchen let out a wild roar, and the profound black colossal dragon roared furiously to the heavens. Its enormous body rumbled as it charged towards Nietion. A violent, ocean-like aura covered the heavens and the earth, surging in the void. The entire space was stretched taut, as if it was about to be torn apart. Boom! At the same time, Nietion brandished his long sword and thrust it forward. Suddenly, a sword shadow surged out, exploding and surging. A 1,000-meter-long sword shadow appeared, and it attacked the black dragon. The crowd below was completely dumbfounded. Their eyes trembled, as if they could not believe what they were seeing. It was hard to imagine that this was a fight between a late paramount god and a half-peak paramount god. At this moment, Yu Qingqi's expression was completely blank. He finally understood why Yu Shenglin had warned him not to offend Nietion. Nietion was indeed terrifying. He was only a late-stage paramount god, but he could fight a peak half-step expert head-on. When he reached the paramount god stage, wouldn't he be able to fight a peak godly state expert? It was hard to imagine how terrifying Nietion would be when he grew up. QL 11-inch rumble. At this moment, the profound black dragon and the gigantic sword shadow collided. A thunderous boom rang out, and the space suddenly trembled. Boundless power instantly surged out, spreading in all directions. Bang, bang, bang. Terrible explosions sounded out in the air. Waves of power tore everything apart, and the cliffs on both sides cracked and crumbled into rubble. Nietion and Rin Quanchen's figures were once again engulfed by the raging waves. The two of them were no longer visible. The crowd below looked up, wondering what was happening in the sky. After a long time, the turbid waves in the air finally dissipated, and two figures gradually appeared. Two blood-colored figures hovered in the air, trembling slightly. This! Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when they saw this. Their expressions extremely shocked. The confrontation between Nietian and Ren Quanchen ended in a lose-lose situation. Ren Quanchen's body swayed slightly. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but before he could say a word, he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Are you surprised?" Nietian's voice echoed out, filled with a strong sense of provocation. Ren Quanchen's eyes trembled slightly. He was indeed very surprised. He had never thought that at the last moment, Nietian's sword would strangely become stronger. Chapter 2476. How is this possible? Ren Quanchen stood in the air shakily, his lips quivering as he finally cried out in shock. He never would have thought that Nietian could actually advance his Sword Dao realm in an instant. Before that move, Nietian was only at the intermediate stage Sword and Martial Unity realm. But now, he became the advanced stage Sword and Martial Unity realm. In Ren Quanchen's view, this was something completely impossible. At that kind of life and death juncture, did Nietian still have the mood to comprehend Sword Dao realm? Nothing is impossible. The corners of Nietian's mouth twitched as he responded coolly. In that instant earlier, he felt that he entered a mysterious state. That state only lasted for a blink of an eye, and it made his Sword Dao realm advance. Ordinary people thought that the best environment for martial artists to cultivate was all sorts of mystic realms. Martial artists could communicate with heaven and earth and comprehend martial Dao in a completely undisturbed environment. But in Nietian's view, the best cultivation environment was actually the moment of life and death. The path of martial Dao was originally heaven-defying. The moment of life and death was the moment when a person's state of mind was at its most open-minded. Many martial artists comprehended peerless martial arts and martial techniques all at the moment of life and death. It was not strange that Nietian advanced to Sword Dao realm in an instant. That clash earlier could be said to be a moment of life and death, a clash of pinnacles. Nietian released berserk blood qi. Coupled with the advancement of Sword Dao realm, it made him not be at a disadvantage. Both sides ended up with injuries. But the difference was that Nietian's martial body was stronger than Ren Quanchen's. Hence, the injuries he suffered at this time were not considered too severe. However, his blood qi was expended too much. His face was very pale. One had to admit that Ren Quanchen's secret art was really very powerful. If not for Nietian advancing his Sword Dao realm at the final juncture, his outcome would absolutely not be as easy as now. Nietian, even if I is not your match. At this time, Ren Quanchen opened his mouth coldly. The corners of his mouth curled into a hint of a strange smile as he said, "Do you think that you can really leave this place alive?" The smile on Ren Quanchen's face became even weirder. Unfortunately, at the next moment, a scene that Ren Quanchen couldn't even dream of appeared. "He won't live, but you'll die before him." As soon as he finished speaking, a low voice resounded in the sky, and it was mournful and filled with extremely heavy, killing intent. When Ren Quanchen heard this voice, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. However, before he could react, a black claw appeared in the void and pierced through Ren Quanchen's chest like a ghost. Instantly, fresh blood gushed out. Ren Quanchen's eyes widened and the light in his eyes disappeared. A half-step pinnacle ranker, the former deputy leader of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, died just like that. Until the moment of his death, Ren Quanchen did not know who killed him. Nietian was in front of Ren Quanchen and was shocked by the scene in front of him. At this moment, the face that appeared in front of him was not unfamiliar. In fact, it was extremely familiar. It was the vice chairman of the Holy Assembly, Nangong Duxiu. The person who killed Ren Quanchen was Nangong Duxiu, a fool coveting the position of vice chairman. What a joke. Nangong Duxiu smiled cold after killing Ren Quanchen casually. Then he locked his gaze on Nietian and said with a sinister smile, "Nietian, long time no see." "Nangong Duxiu." Nietian frowned and shouted the other party's name. He had never expected Nangong Dushio to appear here. Nangong Dushio was the true vice chairman of the Holy Assembly. His strength was even greater than Rinquanchen's. Rinquanchen was only a half-step pinnacle ranker, but Nangong Dushio could be considered a pinnacle godly state expert. In the entire 9 major domains, only a few people were stronger than Nangong Dushio. Nangong Dushio. Below, when Yu Qingqi heard this name, his eyes trembled. He was so shocked that he was dumbfounded. He could not understand what Nie Tian had done to incur the pursuit of so many experts. First, it was the Wind and Cloud Alliance's vice chairman, followed by the Holy Assembly's vice chairman. Would it be the Xingtian Alliance's vice chairman next? Nie Tian, your increase in strength has exceeded my expectations. Therefore, I can only take action personally. Nangong Dushio looked cold at Nie Tian. His eyes were as vicious as a wolf's. Nie Tian took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He now understood why Fat Cat had panicked earlier. It was because he had discovered Nangong Dushio. Nangong Dushio was truly despicable. It was obvious that he had been hiding in the dark, but he had not taken action. He had allowed Rinquanchen to kill Nie Tian. Then, when Rinquanchen and Nie Tian both suffered heavy injuries, he would launch a sneak attack and kill Rinquanchen. Now, he only needed to kill Nie Tian, and everything would be perfect. I did not expect the Holy Assembly's vice chairman to personally appear, Nie Tian said indifferently, but he could not calm down. With his current strength, he could not fight Nangong Dushio. Therefore, there was only one way for him to survive, and that was to escape. At this time, Little Fat Cat's intelligence was displayed. He had already prepared an escape route for Jun Ouching in advance. As Nie Tian spoke, he paid attention to Yu Ji Wushuang and Yu Qingqi's positions. They were very close to Jun Ouching, so there should be no problem. The only problem now was Nie Tian himself. He was tens of thousands of meters away from Jun Ouching. If Jun Ouching immediately opened the spatial channel, he would not be able to rush over. Moreover, with Nangong Dushio's strength, she would not allow Nie Tian to run tens of thousands of meters away in an instant. Nie Tian, Nangong Dushio is not the only one you need to worry about. At this moment, Fat Cat's voice resounded in Nie Tian's consciousness again. What do you mean? Nie Tian was stunned. He immediately thought of something, and his expression changed. There are other people hiding in the void. Fat Cat said with a trembling voice. This person's strength is not inferior to Nangong Dushio's. Nie Tian's pupil shrank, and his face grew grim. How could he have imagined that there was another expert lurking in the void around him? Moreover, this expert's strength was not inferior to Nangong Dushio's. QL11 Nangong Dushio alone was already troublesome enough. Now that there was another lurker, how could Nie Tian escape this predicament? At this moment, the corners of Nangong Dushio's mouth suddenly twitched as she spoke coldly. Scale Lord, do it. At the same time, Nie Tian suddenly shouted, Jun Ouching, get ready to leave. As soon as the two voices rang out, the void trembled slightly, and a black figure appeared like a ghost. Swoosh! Immediately, a black claw shot out like an arrow and attacked Nie Tian. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian felt a bone-piercing coldness assaulting him. The aura of death was so real that his pupils couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 2477. The Master of the Reverse Scale. Nie Tian instantly realized that the black figure was the strongest expert of the reverse scale, one of the 3 mysterious organizations of the 9 regions, the Master of the Reverse Scale. Fat Cat had said that this person was no weaker than Nangong Dushio. In the 9 regions, there were only a handful of people stronger than Nangong Dushio. Nangong Dushio had addressed this person as the Master of the Reverse Scale, which undoubtedly meant that this person was the Master of the Reverse Scale. Nie Tian would never have imagined that not only would Rinquanchen and Nangong Dushio appear, but even the legendary Master of the Reverse Scale had appeared in order to kill him. Nie Tian could not imagine how powerful the Master of the Reverse Scale was. Facing the Master of the Reverse Scale's ultimate attack, Nie Tian reacted instantly. In the blink of an eye, he activated all of his defenses. A layer of white radiance appeared around his body as he activated the extreme Yang Sky battle armor. QL-11 surges of astral energy gushed out as the Astral Soul Shield and Astral Soul Armor appeared simultaneously. However, these were not enough. Nietion's body shook as the 9-bone, eroding soul shackling chains appeared simultaneously. They intertwined and formed a soul shackling shield around his body. In the next instant, a terrifying black claw appeared and descended towards Nietion. The black claw did not seem to have much power, but the sharp aura it exuded was extremely frightening. Bang! 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 The instant the black claw descended, 3 muffled sounds could be heard. The extreme Yang Sky battle armor, Star Soul Shield, and Star Soul Armor were directly shattered. Bang! Whoosh! Following which, the black claw suddenly slashed downwards, and a crisp cracking sound could be heard in the air. The 9-bone eroding soul shackling chains around Nietion's body were shattered, turning into incantation runes and disappearing in the air. However, the black claw had also suffered from the impact, and its power had been greatly weakened. At this moment, Star Soul wings appeared on Nietion's back. When they suddenly unfolded, they were hundreds of meters long. He flapped his wings and instantly retreated. Puffed, puffed, puffed. In the next moment, the black claws morphed into 3 sharp black blades that slashed into Nietion's chest, leaving 3 gashes so deep that bones could be seen. Nietion didn't care at all. His figure retreated 1,000 meters away, finally putting some distance between them. Nietion. June Ouching couldn't help exclaiming when she saw Nietion's injury. "Don't worry about me. Open the passage and get ready to leave." Nietion endured the pain in his chest and shouted. June Ouching froze for a moment. After that, she stabbed out with her sword, and a space-time sword shadow appeared in the air, instantly forming a space-time gate. Silly 9 run. This time, Yu Qingqi reacted very quickly. With a loud shout, his figure flashed, and he was the first to step into the spatial gate. Yu Ji and Wu Shuang came to their senses. Their huge figures dashed over and entered the gate of time and space. June Ouching's beautiful eyes flickered. She was extremely nervous. She used her sword intent to spread and opened a space-time gate that was 10,000 meters away. However, with her sword intent, she wouldn't be able to maintain it for long. At most, it would be a few seconds. Therefore, Nietion immediately rushed over. "I'm coming." Nietion flapped his wings, and his figure instantly moved, rushing towards June Ouching. Nangong Dushio and the Lord of the Reverse Scale were startled by this sudden scene. They exclaimed in surprise. The two of them had never expected that Nietion would survive the sneak attack of the Lord of the Reverse Scale. Nietion's reaction was too fast. It was as if he had already known that the Lord of the Reverse Scale would sneak attack him. Indeed, Nietion had already known that someone was hiding. Therefore, he had released all the power in his body and instantly activated it. If he hadn't done so, the Lord of the Reverse Scale's attack would have killed him. He didn't die. The Lord of the Reverse Scale reacted and spoke in a cold tone. His eyes were as dark as the abyss as they firmly locked onto Nietion. "He wants to escape. Stop him." Nangong Dushio was startled. Bean-sized beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead as he shouted frantically. In the next moment, he and the Lord of the Reverse Scale moved at the same time. They were as fast as the wind and lightning. The two of them attacked while they were still in midair. Boom! Nangong Dushio sent out a palm strike. Boundless thunderbolt power descended and turned into a 10,000-meter long thunderbolt net that enveloped Nietion. Boom! The Lord of the Reverse Scale also sent out a palm strike. A black radiance pierced through the sky and turned into a black claw that attacked Nietion. The two of them were peak God Realm experts. Therefore, the power of their attacks was unimaginable. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if Nietion was hit by either of the two attacks, he would definitely die. Nietion, be careful. June Ouching's eyes trembled as she saw this scene from the side. Nietion's eyes suddenly focused. Blood chi was released from his body. At the same time, sword intent, surge around his body. The starry heaven slash in his hand flickered with sword radiance. At this moment, he entered a mysterious state. The entire world seemed to have quietened down. There was only him and the surging sword intent in every corner. At this moment, Nietian actually closed his eyes. His consciousness seemed to have entered another world. The surrounding space was very familiar. Nietian once again returned to the tripartite sacred array. "Brat, you're dead." Nangang Dushio could clearly see that Nietian had closed his eyes. She couldn't help but roar. It was as though she could already see the scene of Nietian being blasted to smithereens. But at this moment, Nietian's eyes suddenly opened. Earth sword moon devouring. Then, the corners of Nietian's mouth twitched. The starry heaven slash was unleashed. Endless sword intent and blood chi condensed and fused. A sword shadow rumbled out with a majestic momentum that could devour the heaven and earth. This sword move was a sword move that Nietian had never used before. Sacred Heaven Defying Sword's second move, Earth Sword Devouring. When his consciousness entered the tripartite sacred array, he had a new understanding of the Sacred Heaven Defying Sword. Moreover, his Sword Dao realm had just advanced. Therefore, he could use the Earth Sword Devouring at his limit. Boom! In the next moment, the majestic sword shadow collided with the black claws, and a loud explosion rang out in the air. Bang! Then, the sword shadow crumbled. The black claw received the impact and turned back into a black radiance that attacked. Nietian didn't care. He raised his head and looked at the lightning net that was about to fall. If he was hit by the lightning net, he would be smithereens in his current state. Demon Eye open. At this moment, a black radiance surged out from Nietian's right eye. It was like a sharp arrow that was released from a bow. At this moment, a dark aura spread out and filled the surrounding space. Bang! In the next moment, the cold black radiance pierced through the lightning net and left a hole that was a few hundred meters long. The corners of Nietian's mouth twitched. He turned to look at Jun ouching. PFFF. But at this moment, a black radiance fell from the sky and pierced through his shoulder. Ah! Nietian screamed in pain as pain spread through his entire body. However, the wings on his back trembled, and he flew towards Jun ouching. Nangang Dushio and the Lord of the Reverse Scale were both stunned. They were extremely shocked. They didn't expect that Nietian would be able to find a chance of survival when the two of them were working together. At this moment, the two of them moved again and rushed towards Nietian. Nietian's figure swayed in the air. He was relying on the astral soul wings to maintain his balance. He was getting closer and closer to Jun ouching. 1,000 meters, 100 meters, 10 meters. Chapter 2478. Just as Nietian and Jun ouching disappeared, the space-time gate closed up and the space returned to normal. Nangang Dushio and the Lord of the Reverse Scale landed almost at the same time, but they were too late. The two of them stared at the empty space, their faces as ugly as eggplants and chrysanthemums. One of them was the Deputy President of the Sacred Parliament, while the other was the Lord of the Reverse Scale. They were both top figures in the 9 major dominions. The two of them had appeared at the same time, but Nietian had escaped. At this moment, the two of them felt a sense of shame, as though they had been toyed with. They had never imagined that a late-stage paramount god would be able to escape from two peak god realm martial artists. It was unbelievable. If this matter were to spread, the martial artists of the 9 major dominions would probably laugh their heads off. Damn it! Nangang Dushio suddenly roared. His entire body seemed to have gone mad, and his face was distorted into a terrifying malevolence. The Lord of the Reverse Scale did not react much, but he was also shocked. This was the first time he had fought with Nietian, and the result was unexpected. It was no wonder that the 13 thorns of the Reverse Scale had all died at the hands of Nietian. President Nangang, don't be angry. The Lord of the Reverse Scale smiled faintly and said, "That kid was hit by my black scale, cursed chi. He won't live." Nangang Dushio frowned, but he did not speak. If not for the special status of the Lord of the Reverse Scale, he would have already started cursing. Nietian had the God Fiend origin embryo. How could a mere black scale curse, chi, kill Nyetian? In short, Nangang Dushio felt that as long as he did not see Nyetian's corpse, he would not believe that Nyetian was dead. At the same time, in a dark area, several figures were floating in the air. Nyetian, are you all right? Jun Aoqing was supporting Nyetian and asked nervously. Nyetian shook his head slightly, but his expression was very unsightly. At the last moment, he had used the moon-swallowing earth sword to block the Lord of the Reverse Scale's attack. Then, he forcefully used his devil eye to break Nangang Dushio's attack. Moreover, he had used a large amount of blood chi in his battle with Ren Quanchen. In addition, the Lord of the Reverse Scale had left 3 bloody wounds on his chest, and his shoulder had also been pierced through. Therefore, his current condition was very poor. However, with his recovery ability, as long as it wasn't a fatal injury, he should be able to recover quickly. However, the 3 bloody wounds on his chest and the pierced shoulder did not recover, and they were still bleeding nonstop. The attack of the Lord of the Reverse Scale is strange, Nyetian thought to himself. But in order to not worry Jun Aoqing, he still persisted. Nyetian, hold on. You should be hit by a type of curse energy. At this moment, the fat cat's voice rang out. We've arrived at the connection between the God-forbidding realm and the frozen ruins. Let's leave this place and enter the frozen ruins first. Yes. Nyetian nodded, then took out the space-time scroll given to him by Elder Hua and handed it to Jun Aoqing. However, at that very moment, Yu Qingqi took a step forward and stopped Nyetian. With a cold smile on his face, he said, Lord Nyetian, you're seriously injured. Why don't you leave the rest to me? Nyetian was startled. Then, his gaze turned serious, and his eyes were filled with dense, killing intent. Yu Qingqi's eyes trembled when he felt the cold, killing intent. He was so scared that his face turned pale, and he subconsciously took a few steps back. He didn't expect that Nyetian would still have such dense, killing intent, even though he was heavily injured. He originally thought that since Nyetian was injured, he would listen to him. But now, it seemed that he was wrong. Yu Qingqi, I'll give you the space-time scroll now. At this moment, Nyetian stretched out his hand, but his eyes were filled with dense, killing intent. He said coldly, but you have to think about it. Do you really want it? Yu Qingqi's eyes trembled, and his face turned even paler. He waved his hand and said, Nya, Lord Nyetian, I don't want it. I don't want it. Yu Qingqi, you'd better know your place. If you do something like this again, I'm afraid you'll die. Nye Tianling laughed, then handed the space-time scroll to Jun Aoqing. QL11 Yu Qingqi's strength was too weak, and he didn't know his place. Not to mention that he couldn't compete with Nye Tian. Even Jun Aoqing could kill him in an instant. Even if Nye Tian was really injured to the point where he couldn't command the others, it should be Jun Aoqing who took over everything. It shouldn't be Yu Qingqi's turn. Seventh brother, this person is so powerful. Yu Ji Wushuang, who was beside Yu Qingqi, said in a low, muffled voice. Get lost. Yu Qingqi scolded angrily with an impatient expression. Nye Tian glanced at him, but he didn't say anything. This Yu Qingqi really didn't know what was good for him. If Yu Ji Wushuang hadn't intervened just now, he would have died. Moreover, no matter how stupid Yu Ji Wushuang was, he was still his brother. This guy didn't treat Yu Ji Wushuang like an elder brother at all. Instead, he hated Yu Ji Wushuang. After a while, Jun Aoqing used the space-time scroll to open a space-time tunnel. Yet Tian and the others didn't hesitate, and they stepped into the space-time tunnel. The next moment, they landed, and they found themselves in a strange world. Is this the frozen relic? Nye Tian looked around, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. At this moment, they were in a mountain range, surrounded by towering trees and huge rocks. What puzzled Nye Tian was that the rocks and trees here were actually bigger than those in the Nine Realms. Moreover, the divine energy in the space here was even stronger than in the Nine Realms. Nye Tian couldn't figure out why. He had thought that the divine energy in the Nine Realms would be stronger. After all, the Nine Realms had 9 great source powers. Another strange thing was that this realm was called the Frozen Ruins. Nyetian had thought that it would be a world of ice and snow. At this moment, before Nyetian had time to observe too much, the fat cat's voice rang out. Nyetian, find a place first. I want to examine your injuries. Okay. Nyetian nodded, and he prepared to find a safe place to examine his injuries. At this moment, the 3 bloody wounds on his chest and the bloody hole on his shoulder were no longer bleeding, but they hadn't healed. Nyetian felt a strange power surging in his body. It was as if thousands of ants were wriggling in his limbs and veins. This feeling was extremely uncomfortable. He had been hit by the Lord of the Reverse Scale's Black Scale curse. It was extremely terrifying. If he didn't treat in time, once the curse spread throughout his body, he would rot and die. However, just as Nyetian and the others were about to leave, a voice rang out. The people in front stop. Immediately, a figure descended from the sky and landed in front of Nyetian and the others, blocking their way. Huh? Nyetian was stunned. Looking at the man in white in front of him, he immediately understood that this person was hiding in a tree. Young Master Hua, wait for me. Soon after, a coy voice rang out. Another figure descended and landed beside the white-robed man. It was a woman in pink. This pink-clothed woman was very beautiful and seductive, and her body was hot. Moreover, at this moment, her clothes were disheveled. Under her almost transparent clothes, one could see a scene that would make people want to vomit blood. You Qingqi was stunned for a second and suddenly shouted, as if he had suddenly realized something. Nie Tianling gave Yu Qingqi a cold glance, and the latter immediately shrank back. Even a fool couldn't tell what the man in white and the woman in pink were hiding in the tree. Did Yu Qingqi need to remind them? Moo! Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense. He didn't care what the man in white and the woman in pink were doing. He just wanted to treat his injuries as soon as possible. Chapter 2479. The white-garbed man's eyes glittered with greed, and his lascivious gaze was fixed on Jun Ouching. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed, and his face instantly darkened. This white-garbed man was definitely a slut, having an illicit affair with a woman in broad daylight. This kind of person looking at Jun Ouching was blasphemy. Get the hell out of here, Nie Tian bellowed. His eyes shone with a fierce light, as if he were a ferocious wolf. He had just arrived in the frozen ruins and didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble. Therefore, he was being very polite to the white-garbed man. The white-garbed man said, surprised. Chuckling coldly, he said, Do you know who I am, you white-haired punk? Are you tired of living? How dare you talk to me like that? Last chance. Screw off, Nie Tian said, his expression grim and murderous. The white-garbed man's eyes narrowed as he sensed the intense, killing intent. Shifting his gaze from Jun Ouching to Nie Tian, he chuckled coldly and said, A crippled cat like you dares to act so arrogantly. I'm very curious to know who gave you the gall to do this. Nie Tian was gravely injured, but his rage and killing intent were even more intense. Seeing that Nie Tian was injured, the white-garbed man grew even more arrogant. Are you looking to die? Nie Tian's gaze suddenly turned cold, and he could no longer suppress the rage in his body. He suddenly took a step forward, and a violent aura blasted out, directly forcing the white-clothed man to take a few steps back. What? The white-garbed man said, his expression flickering with shock. Never could he have guessed that Nie Tian's energy would be so strong. He was clearly a late paramount god, just like Nie Tian. How could Nie Tian, who was seriously injured, be able to put such pressure on him? Splat. However, that was when Nie Tian shivered and coughed up a mouthful of blood, his face turning even paler. QL 11-inch Nie Tian, the curse energy in your body is very strong. Don't forcefully circulate your vital meridians anymore. In his divine sense, the fat cat's voice rang out. Nie Tian was afflicted with the black scale curse chi. The circulation of his elemental meridians would cause the cursed chi to circulate and corrode his body. Seeing Nie Tian vomit blood, the white-robed man couldn't help but sneer. Then he locked his gaze onto Jun Ouching and said, White-haired brat, you can leave if you want, but let this little girl stay. Consider it my compensation. You dog, you're courting death." As soon as the man in white finished speaking, before Nyetian could say anything, June Ouching let out a delicate shout, and her figure instantly moved. Whoosh! In the next moment, the sword light flashed, and a bloody light appeared in the air. The white-robed man's head flew into the air. The eyeballs on the head flickered with extreme shock. Unfortunately, the white-robed man didn't even have the chance to scream in pain. June Ouching's attack was like a ghost, catching people off guard. Even a peak paramount god would be killed on the spot, not to mention that the white-robed man was only a late-stage paramount god. The sudden scene caused the crowd to freeze on the spot in a daze. Yu Qingqi's expression was one of extreme shock. His lips trembled, but he couldn't make a sound. He had originally thought that June Ouching was just a burden by Nyetian's side. He never thought that this seemingly weak little girl would have such shocking strength. At this time, the pink-robed woman finally reacted and screamed. "Let's go," Nyetian said indifferently, ignoring the pink-robed woman, and turned to leave. The white-robed man's death was completely his own fault. Nyetian and the others didn't even notice his existence. He was the one who jumped out to provoke June Ouching. June Ouching had a staunch character. How could she tolerate someone being so frivolous to her? Young Master Hua is dead? The pink-robed woman only calmed down after Nyetian and the others had completely disappeared. She looked at the corpse on the ground and spoke in a trembling voice. The white-robed man was called Hua Zigue. He had an extraordinary status. He was the grandson of the 10,000 Mountain Sect Hall of Enforcement's Grand Elder. Hurry up and report this to Lord Sect Leader." The pink-robed woman screamed as she sobered up a little. She grabbed Hua Zigue's corpse and ran away. At the same time, Nyetian and the others entered a valley. "Nyetian, are you all right?" June Ouching asked worriedly as she supported Nyetian. She could feel a burning aura coming from his body. "I'm fine." Nyetian nodded slightly and said while enduring the pain. He felt a burning pain in his body. The terrifying cursed chi was wreaking havoc in his body, making his meridians feel like they were going to rot. Yu Qingqi, take Yu Ji and Wu Shuang and stand guard outside the valley. I need to rest. Nyetian sat cross-legged in the valley and said to Yu Qingqi. "Yes." Yu Qingqi replied. He then asked Yu Ji and Wu Shuang to stand guard outside the valley. Puff! At that moment, Nyetian's body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was dirty and black, as if he had been severely poisoned. June Ouching cried out in shock when she realized how serious Nyetian's injuries were. Nyetian waved his hand slightly to indicate that he was fine. The Lord of the Reverse Scale's Black Scale Cursed Chi was very strong. Even with Nyetian's martial body, it was difficult for him to endure. If it wasn't for Nyetian's strong martial body, he would have been corroded by the Black Scale Cursed Chi. Nyetian, hold on. At that moment, the fat cat's figure appeared and carefully sensed Nyetian. Its eyes trembled slightly, and it released a stream of azure chi that flowed into Nyetian's body. The azure chi flowed in and stimulated the Black Scale Cursed Chi, causing Nyetian to fall into even greater pain. The fat cat withdrew the azure chi and frowned. This cursed chi has a strange attribute. It contains both the dark and fire attributes. It's very difficult. Lord Chinchilla, do you have a way to cure Nyetian? June Ouching's beautiful eyes flashed, and she asked nervously. The fat cat's face was dignified. It's troublesome to expel the cursed chi. You must use a medicinal herb that contains both the light and water attributes to neutralize the cursed chi. The Black Scale Cursed Chi contained both the dark and fire attributes. Only a medicinal herb that contained both the light and water attributes could cure it. Even if Nyetian's martial body was strong, if he couldn't be cured, he could only hold on for 3 days at most. There are many medicinal herbs in the Nine Superbs, but there are no medicinal herbs that contain both the light and water attributes. The fat cat shook its head. I'll go find it. June Ouching's eyes trembled. She turned around and left. Ouching! At that moment, Nyetian shouted and stopped June Ouching. Don't worry, I'll be fine. June Ouching knew that Niet Tian was worried about her, so she said with a firm look, Niet Tian, let her go. The fat cat also spoke at this time. With her strength, she'll be fine. Niet Tian thought for a moment and finally nodded. His current state was too bad, so he could only rely on June Ouching. June Ouching's strength was not weak. Coupled with the space-time swordsman, even if she encountered a powerful enemy, she still had the ability to protect herself. Chapter 2480. Niet Tian looked in the direction that June Ouching had left with a heavy heart. He had not expected that he would end up like this right after coming to the frozen ruins. He still had to rely on June Ouching. Nangong Duxiao, master of the reverse scale. When I return to the 9 domains, it will be time for you to die. Niet Tian said with a heavy heart. His eyes were filled with killing intent. His current state was all thanks to Nangong Duxiao and the master of the reverse scale. With his strength, it was already a heaven-defying feat for him to be able to escape from the hands of 2 pinnacle powerhouses. Niet Tian, you don't have to worry. I believe that June Lass will definitely bring back the herbs you need. Fat Cat knew that Niet Tian was worried about June Ouching, so it comforted him. Niet Tian nodded and did not say anything else. He calmed down and started to slowly recover. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. Niet Tian and the others were still waiting in the valley, but June Ouching had not returned. It's been 2 days. Nothing happened to June Ouching, right? Niet Tian paced back and forth in the valley. He was extremely frustrated. The wounds on his chest and shoulder had already healed, but the black scale curse energy in his body had become even more berserk. Niet Tian's face was no longer pale. Instead, it had turned black and looked extremely frightening. He could feel that the black scale curse energy was slowly corroding his body. Even though Niet Tian had the earth vein source, the supreme dragon vein, the star origin stone, and other heaven-defying items, he still could not resist the black scale curse energy. Niet Tian, don't worry. In your current state, the more anxious you are, the stronger the curse energy in your body will become. Fat Cat reminded Niet Tian. Niet Tian took 3 deep breaths. Even though he wanted to calm down, he could not. QL11, he was worried about June Ouching. If anything happened to her, he would never be able to forgive himself. I'm still too weak. Niet Tian sighed in his heart and became even more irritated. Only now did he realize that unknowingly, June Ouching's weight in his heart had become so heavy. Half a day later, June Ouching still hadn't returned. Niet Tian's condition worsened. His entire body had turned black, and there was even a rotten smell coming from his body. The black scale curse energy continuously eroded his blood, meridians, and bones, causing his martial body to become weaker and weaker. Why isn't this little girl back yet? At this time, even Fat Cat was anxious. With Niet Tian's current condition, he could only hold on for half a day at most. If he didn't receive treatment within half a day, Niet Tian would be in danger. Niet Tian, Lord Niet Tian, are you all right? On the other side of the valley, Yu Qingqi looked at Niet Tian in horror. If something happened to Niet Tian, it would be really troublesome. I'm fine. Niet Tian responded in a deep voice and tried to calm himself down. At this time, he could only wait. Someone's coming. At this time, Fat Cat suddenly exclaimed, and her dark blue eyes suddenly trembled. June Ouching. Niet Tian's eyes became hot. His first reaction was that June Ouching had returned. He forcefully released his divine sense and probed outside the valley. However, his expression changed and he cried out in shock. It's someone else. Niet Tian was very familiar with June Ouching's aura. However, the aura coming from outside the valley was not June Ouching at all. It was more than 10 auras mixed together. They seemed to be panicking, as if they were being chased by something. Roar! Just when Niet Tian was puzzled, a violent roar came from outside the valley. It sounded like some kind of large divine beast had come out. Yeah, Lord Niet Tian, should we leave this place? Yu Qingqi also sensed that someone was coming and asked in a trembling voice. We can't leave. Niet Tian's gaze was fixed, and he said in a deep voice. His current state was very bad, and he urgently needed medical attention. June Ouching only knew this place. If she returned and couldn't find Niet Tian and the others, wouldn't it be even worse? Yu Qingqi's expression turned ugly. He wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. He missed the time when Tian was not injured. With the latter around, he felt very at ease. Now that Tian was injured, he always felt that it was not safe. Help! After a moment, a mournful cry for help came from outside the valley. It was a woman. Old Nine, you stay here and protect Lord Tian. I'll go out and take a look. Yu Qingqi frowned and finally said something decent. All right. Yu Ji Wushuang nodded and chuckled. He said to Tian, Lord Tian, don't worry. With Wushuang here, no one can hurt you. Tian nodded slightly and prepared to fight. Of the two brothers of the Yu family, one was cunning and the other was stupid. But at the critical moment, they performed well. At the same time, outside the valley, more than a dozen figures were running madly toward the valley in panic. Yu Qingqi frowned slightly when he saw the figures. He was a little surprised. These warriors were all paramount gods, and there were even a few late-stage paramount gods. Right now, they were fleeing in panic. What was it that was chasing them? Help! One of the warriors was a young woman. When she saw Yu Qingqi, she shouted anxiously. Yu Qingqi frowned, but he didn't move. He wouldn't act rashly before he had a clear understanding of the situation. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen warriors ran madly to the outside of the valley. And at this moment, Yu Qingqi finally saw what was chasing after these cultivators. Tens of thousands of meters away, more than a dozen figures flashed like lightning. What is that? Yu Qingqi was stunned. He didn't recognize the beast in front of him. The beast wasn't very large, only about 100 meters long. It looked like a giant wolf, but its body flickered with white light. Its aura was powerful, and it moved very quickly. That's a phantom demon wolf. The woman in the lead cried out in alarm. Then, she ran directly into the valley. A phantom demon wolf? Yu Qingqi was stunned, and his face fell. At that moment, a phantom demon wolf rushed over, its sharp claws swiping viciously at Yu Qingqi. Bastard, you're courting death. Yu Qingqi reacted quickly. His eyes narrowed, and he struck out with his palm. The palm whistled through the air, and its momentum was imposing. Bang! In the next moment, a muffled sound rang out in the air. The phantom demon wolf was sent flying by Yu Qingqi's palm. However, the phantom demon wolf's bestial body was extremely tough, and it wasn't injured at all. After stabilizing itself, it glared at Yu Qingqi, its eyes blazing with cold light. This bastard's bestial body is so strong. Yu Qingqi's expression darkened. He had never imagined that the phantom demon wolf would be so strong. Based on his initial estimates, the phantom demon wolf's battle prowess was comparable to a mid-paramount god, and its bestial body was comparable to a late or peak paramount god. Right at that moment, Yu Qingqi suddenly raised his head. His expression instantly froze, and a gulping sound came from his throat. Off in the distance, waves of phantom demon wolves were charging in their direction, like a white wave. There were at least several thousand phantom demon wolves in the area. Chapter 24:81. Oh no! Yu Qingqi looked at the pack of wolves, his eyes trembling. His expression was one of extreme horror. If there were only a few dozen phantom demon wolves, he and Yu Ji Wushuang would have been able to deal with them. But now, there are thousands of phantom demon wolves in front of them, and the larger ones were obviously stronger. They were probably comparable to peak paramount gods. What exactly had those 10 or so cultivators done to attract so many phantom demonic wolves to hunt them down? At the same time, Tian, Yu Ji Wushuang, and Yu Ji Wushuang were in the valley. When they saw the warriors suddenly rushing toward them, their expressions changed. But then, they felt the ground shake. The whole valley was shaking violently, as if it was about to collapse. What's going on? Yu Ji Wushuang asked, his face stiff. He seemed very panicked. The warriors glanced at Tian and Yu Ji Wushuang, then looked into the valley. Their faces were filled with panic. They had never thought that this was a dead end. They were now trapped in the valley by the phantom demon wolves. At that moment, Yu Qingqi ran back in panic and shouted, Lord Tian, let's run. Tian frowned and asked in a low voice, What's going on outside? Is it a beast tide? He felt a violent wave surging toward them. It was very frightening, very much like a beast tide. If it really was a beast tide, Nietion and the others would be in trouble. They were stuck in the valley and couldn't charge out. Lord Nietion, it's a pack of phantom demon wolves. They seem to have gone crazy, and they are rushing toward the valley. Yu Qingqi shouted. He was drenched in cold sweat. He was obviously very frightened. A pack of phantom demon wolves? Nietion was stunned. Then he felt the ground shake even more violently. The whole valley shook even more violently, as if it was about to collapse at any moment. At that moment, the woman in purple said in a trembling voice, her face full of despair, "No, we don't have a chance. We can't get out." Ignoring the woman in purple, Nietion turned to Ji Wushuang and said, "Yu Ji Wushuang, follow me." Yu Ji and Wushuang agreed and followed closely behind Nietion. When the two of them arrived outside the valley, they saw countless phantom demonic wolves everywhere they looked. These phantom demon wolves had actually surrounded the entire valley. Damn it! Nietion frowned as he cursed in his heart. He did not leave the valley just now, but now it was impossible for him to leave. Nietion's gaze swept over the pack of phantom demonic wolves, and his heart sank even more when he used his divine sense. In his estimation, the phantom devil wolf was definitely an 8th order god beast, and its aura was comparable to a mid-paramount god. Their auras were even stronger than those of late paramount gods. What was even more troublesome was that a divine beast body was far more frightening than humans. Hence, these phantom demonic wolves were very difficult to kill. Roar! At this time, a giant demon wolf howled. Its 2 fangs flashed with a cold light, and its wolf eyes were incomparably fierce. In the next moment, dozens of phantom demonic wolves moved at the same time, like streaks of white lightning. They pounced at Nietion and Yu Ji Wushuang. "Get out of my way!" Without waiting for Nietion to make a move, Yu Ji Wushuang took a step forward, roared, and directly punched out. Wherever the fist passed, blood splattered everywhere. One of the phantom demonic wolves was directly punched into meat paste by Yu Ji Wushuang. Yu Ji Wushuang's martial body was abnormally strong. His dual bloodline martial body was even stronger than the phantom demonic wolf's beast body. On the other side, Nietion took out the Starlight Heaven Slash, and with a wild slash, the sword whistled like a dragon and directly killed several phantom demonic wolves. But at the same time, the figure of a phantom demonic wolf landed, leaving a bloody wound on Nietion's chest. Nietion retreated a few meters, spitting out a mouthful of filthy blood. If he were in peak condition, ordinary phantom demonic wolves would not be able to get within 100 meters of him. Unfortunately, his physical condition was very poor. Every time he circulated his key meridians, it would stimulate the power of the black scale curse energy. Lord Nietion. Seeing that Nietion was injured, Yu Ji Wushuang hurriedly retreated and shouted. Nietion stabilized his body, and his expression was extremely gloomy. He felt that his body was becoming weaker and weaker under the corrosion of the black scale curse energy. But at this moment, dozens of phantom demonic wolves attacked again, their figures extremely fast like the wind and lightning. "Damn it!" Nietion roared, and the sword within his body rose. His entire body was like a giant sword, 8 desolation sword. He forcefully circulated his key meridians and slashed down with his sword. The sword within his body instantly condensed, and a sword shadow that was thousands of meters long appeared. It was like a flowing waterfall pouring down in torrents. Bang! 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 The sword shadow fell, and endless muffled sounds rang out. Dozens of phantom demonic dragons were directly submerged by the sword shadow and turned into a bloody light. "This guy is so strong," the violet-garbed young woman exclaimed. Her eyes flickered, and she couldn't help but cry out in astonishment. She could tell that Nietion was only a late paramount god, and that he was seriously injured. Considering the circumstances, it was completely inconceivable that Nietion would be able to unleash such terrifying power with a single sword strike. As the terrifying sword descended, Tion's figure suddenly trembled, and he took a few steps back, almost falling to the ground. He had forced his key meridians to operate, which had caused the black scale curse energy to go berserk. Inside of him, streams of black scale curse energy were wreaking havoc, corroding his meridians and meridians. If Tion examined himself with his own eyes, he would find that his blood, meridians, and bones had all become tainted and black. That was a sign that the black scale curse energy had penetrated deep into his bones. If Tion didn't receive treatment in half an hour, he would be in grave danger. Tion, exalted Tion, are you all right? Yu Qingqi couldn't help but panic when he saw that Tion's condition had worsened. QL11 face tense. Tion struggled to keep his balance, but didn't say a word. You've been poisoned, the Violet Guard woman said, looking at Tion in utter shock. Never in her wildest dreams could she have guessed that Tion would be so seriously injured. Tion's face darkened as he swept his gaze across the phantom demon wolves. At this moment, a very strange situation occurred. All of the phantom demon wolves seemed to have calmed down. Countless pairs of wolf eyes locked onto the purple-clothed woman, releasing a cold light. When Tion noticed that, his face darkened. Looking over at the Violet Guard woman, he asked in a cold voice, "What did you do?" All of the phantom devil wolves had been attracted by the Violet Guard woman and her companions. As soon as the Violet Guard woman appeared, all of the phantom devil wolves turned to stare at her, their eyes shining with murderous light. It was obvious that this purple-robed woman had done something to provoke the phantom demon wolf. I didn't do anything," she said, looking a bit flustered. Tion's face darkened. How could he not tell that the Violet Guard woman was lying? Roar, roar, roar. Right at that moment, howls could be heard. The gigantic devil wolves growled in a low voice, giving orders to their subordinates. Chapter 2482. Countless phantom demon wolves rained down from the sky like arrows, their target, the violet-robed woman. Tion's eyes narrowed, and his expression darkened. In his current state, he couldn't kill all of the phantom demon wolves, but he could still protect himself. If he retreated now, he could at least ensure that he wouldn't die. But if he did that, the violet-robed woman would die beyond a shadow of a doubt. She wasn't weak, being a late-stage paramount god. But facing so many phantom demon wolves, there was no way she could stand up to them. If the phantom demon wolves fell, she wouldn't be able to survive. Screw it. In the blink of an eye, Tion reacted. A violent shudder ran through him as sword intent and a terrifying flesh aura surged out of him. 12 heaven-slaying swords formation, activate. In the next moment, Tion let out a bellow, and 12 sword projections suddenly appeared around him. Their sword intent soared into the heavens like dragons. With his martial body at its limit, Tion forcibly activated the 12 heaven-slaying swords formation. Boom, boom, boom. 12 sword shadows, like dragons breaking through the abyss, rushed up to the sky, and the powerful sword aura suddenly burst out, surging in the void. QL11 Tion raised the starry heaven/high into the air, and the 12 sword projections merged together to form a gigantic sword projection that was 5,000 meters long. The violet-robed woman and the others were completely shaken to the core, and their eyes trembled. They could never have imagined that a late-stage paramount god, with his martial body at its limit, could explode with such terrifying power. Die! Tion roared, his face as black as that of a god of death. Boom! The huge sword shadow crashed down like a mountain collapsing in an instant. A power that was as vast as the sea was released, and the surrounding void was shaken. This kind of power was simply too shocking. Rumble, crack, crack, crack. The next moment, the sword projection crashed down, splitting the earth 1,000 meters wide. Boulders crumbled, and vegetation turned to ash. Hundreds of phantom demonic wolves were sent flying by the sword intent berserk wolf's attack, shrieking in pain. After a long time, the violent waves in the air gradually dispersed, and the pack of demon wolves was actually forcefully pushed back several hundred meters. Everyone's eyes trembled as they stared at a blood-red figure. That figure was drenched in blood. However, his blood was not red, but black, and emitted a pungent smell. This figure was none other than Nietion. He forcefully activated the 12 heaven slaying sword formation, causing his blood to flow in the opposite direction. The aura of the black scales seeped into his bones and tore open countless small bloody wounds all over his body. It was extremely terrifying. Yu Qingqi, who was standing off to the side, finally snapped back to reality and called out nervously, "Lord Nietion." He sensed that Nietion's breath was faintly discernible. He was truly worried that the latter would suddenly collapse. Nietion stood his ground, his body not swaying at all. "Why did he save me?" The purple-robed woman spoke with a blank expression, her expression filled with confusion. Just now, Nietion clearly could have dodged, but he had not done so. Instead, he had saved the purple-robed woman. After that sword strike, Nietion had completely reached his limit. Right now, it was extremely difficult for him to even move a single step. Roar! But at this moment, the low howls of the phantom demonic wolves rang out once more. Giant demonic wolves walked over step by step, their ferocious eyes still locked onto the purple-robed woman. Nietion's sword strike had only blocked the attack of the demonic wolves, but the number of demonic wolves that had actually been killed was very few. And now, those giant demonic wolves seemed to be preparing to personally attack. Ordinary phantom demonic wolves were only 100 meters long, but these dozens of demonic wolves were 400 to 500 meters long. They should be at the Wolf King level. Nietion's eyes trembled as he struggled to turn around to look at the purple-robed woman. He said in a deep voice, "What did you do?" These phantom demonic wolves were clearly charging at the purple-robed woman. All of them were ferocious and ruthless. Nietion really couldn't figure out what the purple-robed woman had done to make these phantom demonic wolves so angry. The purple-robed woman's lips trembled. She looked like she was in a difficult position. She stammered, "I can't tell you. I used it to save my younger brother." "Save your younger brother?" Nietion was dazed for a second, and his face was full of confusion. Could it be that the purple-robed woman had taken something from the phantom demonic wolves? That's why the demonic wolves were chasing her so crazily. Roar! Nietion wanted to continue asking, but right at this moment, dozens of demonic wolf kings growled at the same time. Then, they moved in unison, and like sharp white arrows, they pounced towards the purple-robed woman. "Help!" In an instant, the purple-robed woman felt the cold, killing intent. Her eyes trembled, and she screamed in panic. Nietion's eyes narrowed, and his face turned completely black. At this moment, even if he wanted to save her, he didn't have the strength to do so. Not to mention dozens of demonic wolf kings. Even an ordinary phantom demonic wolf could easily kill Nietion. Be careful. At this critical moment, an explosive roar sounded. Then, a huge figure rushed over. It was Yuji Wushuang. Bang! Yuji Wushuang threw a punch, and it landed heavily on the body of a demonic wolf king, sending it flying. Unfortunately, Yuji Wushuang couldn't stop dozens of demonic wolf kings at the same time. Another demonic wolf king pounced ferociously, and its cold, sharp claws were about to land on the purple-robed woman's body. At this critical moment of life and death, a strange scene occurred. Boom! The void suddenly shook, and then a shapeless sword shadow flashed past. The dozens of demonic wolf kings' bodies suddenly stopped, as if they had been frozen in space. Jun ouching. The sudden scene caused Nietion's eyes to tremble, and his eyes revealed an unconcealable passion. Of course, he could tell that the sword shadow, just now, was a space-time sword shadow, and it had directly frozen space. The person who could do such a thing was, of course, Jun ouching. "Nietion, I'm back." The next moment, a clear voice sounded. It was Jun ouching. Jun ouching's figure landed, and she came to Nietion's side. When she sensed the latter's state, her eyes trembled, and she asked in shock, "What's going on? Ouching, did you find the herb?" The corner of Nietion's mouth trembled slightly, and he spoke with difficulty. It was very difficult for him to even speak now. I found it. June Ouching nodded hurriedly, and with a flip of her palm, a crystal-clear, seven-colored flower appeared in the center of her palm. It really is a light attribute and water attribute herb. The fat cat's voice sounded excitedly. Nietion nodded with difficulty, and his mouth opened slightly. June Ouching picked up the seven-colored flower and was about to let Nietion swallow it. Stop! But at this moment, the purple-robed woman cried out in shock and said loudly, "Why do you have the dew rainbow?" June Ouching didn't care about the purple-robed woman at all and directly put the seven-colored flower into Nietion's mouth. Nietion didn't hesitate and swallowed the seven-colored flower. "You!" The purple-robed woman screamed, and her expression was very shocked. Chapter 2483. The lady in purple stood rooted to the ground, her face full of shock. Nietion ignored her. After consuming the dew rainbow, he took a deep breath, and his expression instantly softened. One had to admit that the power of the dew rainbow was very strong. It had a great impact on the black scale curse energy in Nietion's body, instantly weakening the curse energy. Bang! Crack, crack, crack! At this time, the solidified space shook a little and then began to crack. Everyone back off. Seeing this, June Ouching frowned and said in a deep voice. Then, she released the space-time sword intent again, and the space that was about to crack was once again solidified by the sword intent. QL-11 dozens of demon wolf kings were trapped in the space, unable to move. With her strength, although she couldn't kill the demon wolf kings, she could still control them. Everyone backed off, but Nietion didn't move. Suddenly, he looked at the lady in purple and said in a deep voice, "Hand over the thing you took." What did I take?" The lady in purple was dazed for a moment and said nervously, "Don't make me do it." Nietion said in a deep voice, his face as gloomy as water. As soon as he consumed the dew rainbow, he felt that the black scale curse energy had been completely washed away, and his complexion had returned to normal. He was shocked. What kind of flower was this dew rainbow? It contained so much power. He didn't know that the dew rainbow was the sacred flower of the 10,000 Mountains sect. Seeing Nietion's cold face, the lady in purple's face paled, and she couldn't help but take a few steps back. "Miss, you better hand over the thing." Nietion's eyes narrowed. He didn't want to scare the lady in purple, and said, "If you don't hand it over, then we'll leave. I don't think these phantom demon wolves are as easy to talk to as I am. Ouching, let's go." Saying this, Nietion turned and prepared to leave. Don't go." Seeing that Nietion was really going to leave, the girl in purple screamed in fear. These phantom demon wolves were all controlled by June Ouching. If June Ouching left, the phantom demon wolves would tear her into pieces. Miss, let's return the Wolf Emperor to the wolf pack." At this moment, a cultivator stood up from behind the purple-clothed girl and said with a serious expression, "If we don't return the Wolf Emperor to the wolf pack will not rest." Wolf Emperor? Nietion stared blankly for a moment before understanding dawned upon him. As it turned out, the purple-robed woman was holding a phantom wolf emperor. This surprised him greatly, and he felt that it was inconceivable. Logically speaking, shouldn't the phantom wolf emperor be very powerful? How could the purple-clothed girl possibly take it away from the pack of wolves? The purple-clothed girl's beautiful eyes flickered, and there was a trace of moisture surging in her eyes. In order to obtain the phantom wolf emperor, she and a few dozen subordinates had waited outside the wolf pack's territory day and night, observing the habits of the wolves. In the end, they had found a loophole and captured the phantom wolf emperor. For this, she had sacrificed more than 20 of her companions. But now, she had a hand over the wolf emperor. How could she be willing to do that? Most importantly, she wanted to use the wolf emperor's blood to save her younger brother. Young lady, don't hesitate anymore. Hurry up. Nietion's complexion had improved quite a bit. In the blink of an eye, he had more or less recovered. He had noticed that June Ouching couldn't hold on for much longer, so he said in a deep voice, If the purple-clothed girl still didn't hand over the Phantom Wolf Emperor, then Yetion would have no choice but to take it by force. The purple-clothed girl hesitated for a long time before finally nodding. Then, she took out a spirit pet pouch and shook it lightly. A furry little fellow fell out of it. This is the Wolf Emperor. Yetion couldn't help but be stunned and speechless as he looked at the little fellow. The little fellow indeed had the appearance of a wolf cub, but its fur was pure white. However, there was a small tuft of scarlet fur on its forehead. Yes, the purple-clothed girl nodded and said, "This is a wolf cub with the Wolf Emperor's bloodline. The red heart on its forehead is the Wolf Emperor's bloodline mark." Woo-woo. The little wolf cub bared its teeth and let out a few low growls, looking extremely ferocious. Oh-woo. At this moment, the appearance of the Wolf Emperor excited all the phantom demon wolves. They raised their heads to the sky and howled. Bang! At the same time, the dozens of demon wolf kings in the frozen space broke the frozen space at the same time. The dozens of demon wolf kings fell to the ground, but they didn't attack. Instead, they lay on the ground and deeply bowed their heads, bowing to the Wolf Emperor. Roar! The Wolf Emperor let out a low growl. Then, its small figure jumped onto the head of a demon wolf king. Yetion couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw this scene. If the Wolf Emperor refused to leave and ordered the phantom demon wolves to attack, then they would be in trouble. Fortunately, the pack of wolves didn't attack. Instead, they slowly retreated. After a short while, the thousands of phantom demon wolves disappeared. The purple-clothed girl looked in the direction where the pack of wolves disappeared with an expression of unwillingness. Phew! Yetion let out a deep breath of impure air. His tense face relaxed a lot. He didn't expect that the crisis would be resolved just like that. Fortunately, Jun Aoqing came back in time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Jun Aoqing also let out a long breath. Seeing that Yetion's complexion had recovered, she asked with a faint smile, "Yetion, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Yetion nodded with a smile. "Aoqing, it's all thanks to you this time." Jun Aoqing nodded slightly. Her pretty face blushed. She seemed to be a little shy. At this time, Yetion had almost recovered. He hadn't been seriously injured. It was just that he had been corroded by the black scale cursed chi. That was why he was so weak. The dew rainbow dissolved the power of the black scale cursed chi. Naturally, Yetion recovered. He was very surprised. How could the dew rainbow be so strong? After taking the dew rainbow, not only did he dissolve the black scale cursed chi, but he also felt that his martial body had become stronger. "Young lady, what's your name?" Yetion became cold. He couldn't help but look at the girl in purple and asked lightly, "Where did you get your dew rainbow?" The girl in purple did not answer Yetion. Instead, she looked at Jun Aoqing and asked nervously. "In a valley." Jun Aoqing's beautiful eyes narrowed. "Is there a problem? When you entered the valley, no one stopped you?" The girl in purple frowned and looked at Jun Aoqing strangely. "Yes." Jun Aoqing nodded and said, "But my speed was very fast. They couldn't stop me." "Were the people who stopped you 3 old men?" The girl in purple's beautiful eyes trembled as she continued to ask. Jun Aoqing nodded with a puzzled look. The people who stopped her were indeed 3 old men. Moreover, these 3 old men were very strong. They should be at the peak of the half-step realm. If she wasn't a space-time swordsman, she wouldn't have been able to get rid of the 3 old men. This is bad. The girl in purple's face darkened. She was very frightened. What happened? Yetion frowned and stepped forward to ask. The purple-clothed woman sighed and looked at Yetion. What you just consumed was the rainbow dew, the sacred flower of the 10,000 Mountain sect. Only the sect leader of the 10,000 Mountain sect has the right to consume it. Then, the girl in purple turned to look at Jun Aoqing and said, "The valley you entered is the sacred land of the 10,000 Mountain sect. Other than the 3 supremes who guard the sacred land, only the sect leader can enter." "So what?" Jun Aoqing frowned and said cold. The girl in purple's eyes darkened. She said, "According to the rules of the 10,000 Mountain sect, trespassers must die." Yetion was stunned when he heard the girl in purple's words. He frowned and asked, Is the 10,000 Mountains sect very powerful? The 10,000 Mountains sect is one of the 7 major sects in the frozen ruins. Do you think it's powerful? The girl in purple stared at Nyetian and asked. Nyetian's eyes trembled and his face darkened. He seemed to have unintentionally offended a super force in the frozen ruins. Little girl, I've finally found you. At this moment, a deep and powerful voice suddenly rang out from the void. Chapter 2484. 3 sovereigns arrive. In the air, 3 gray-robed figures exuded a powerful aura. Standing there, they were like 3 mountains, giving off an intense pressure. What? Nyetian looked at the 3 figures, his eyes narrowing. Judging from their auras, these 3 old men were undoubtedly half-step peak powerhouses. It's you. June Ouching recognized the 3 old men. Her eyes glittered, and she said with a cold smile, I didn't think you'd chase me all the way here. Nyetian was taken aback by June Ouching's words. Then he realized that these 3 old men were the guardians of the Myriad Mountains sect's holy land. It turned out that June Ouching's Dew Rainbow was stolen from these 3 people. They were all half-step peak experts, and any one of them was stronger than June Ouching. June Ouching must have spent a lot of effort to get rid of them. No wonder June Ouching had been gone for so long. Nyetian's guess was correct. The 3 old men in front of him were the 3 sovereigns of the Myriad Mountains sect. Celestial Yang, Celestial Moon, and Celestial Star. Little girl, the 3 of us left the Holy Land to chase you, said Celestial Yang. He looked at June Ouching, but there wasn't much killing intent in his eyes. Yang Zun, don't talk nonsense with this little girl. She trespassed into the sacred land, which is a taboo of the 10,000-weight mountain school. She also stole the Dew Rainbow, which is even more unforgivable. Let me kill her right away. The Star Venerable was a short and fat man with an impatient personality. His big face was filled with anger as he spoke wildly. Then the Star Venerable moved. He was going to attack for real. Wait, Celestial Star. Celestial Moon said, moving to block Celestial Star's path. What are you doing, Celestial Moon? Celestial Star blurted out. Don't be impulsive. Celestial Moon chuckled, stroking his goatee as he stared at June Ouching. This little girl is so young, but she's already a late-stage paramount god. And she's a rare spacetime swordsman. If I'm not mistaken, she's already at the peak of the sword art unity level. As he spoke, he let out a strange laugh. His eyes flickered with a hint of light, and he said playfully, Have any of you seen such talent before? This little girl's talent is indeed very strong. Otherwise, she would not have been able to escape from the 3 of us. Yang Zun smiled faintly. His eyes flickered as if he was calculating something. Oomph. Celestial Star sneered angrily. So what if she's talented? She trespassed on the sacred land and stole the Dew Rainbow. Celestial Yang knew what Celestial Star meant. Celestial Star must die. Celestial Star said. Celestial 2-inch was of celestial gods. Nyetian, who was listening on the side, had some clues. He had thought it was strange that even if June Ouching was a space-time swordsman, she wouldn't have been able to escape from 3 peak half-step experts. After listening to the conversation, he realized that Celestial Yang and Celestial Moon had realized that June Ouching was very talented, so they didn't kill her. Otherwise, June Ouching wouldn't have been able to steal the Dew Rainbow from them. Little girl, hand over the Dewdrop Rainbow. The Yang Zun smiled faintly and said calmly. June Ouching's eyes flashed. My lords, the Dew Rainbow is gone. If you want to kill me, then do it. June Ouching's aura surged. She was ready for a fight to the death. It's gone. Celestial Yang was stunned. Then he asked, Where did you put the Dew Rainbow? I ate it. Before June Ouching could say anything, Nyetian stepped forward and said calmly, You ate it? The 3 celestial gods were stunned. They screamed at the same time. They stared at Nyetian in disbelief. They didn't know that the Dew Rainbow had already been taken. The Dew Rainbow was the sacred flower of the Myriad Mountain sect. Only the lord of the sect was qualified to enjoy it. Little B** starred, I will kill you. Celestial Star reacted immediately. He roared, and his aura rose. His body moved abruptly, and he slammed his palm down toward Nietian. Boom! In the air, a giant palm shadow fell toward Nietian. Human sword-cutting stars. Nietian frowned and reacted instantly. He thrust out the star's sky slash. The sword shadow whizzed out and blocked the palm shadow in the air. However, his figure was pushed back several steps by the blast of the blast. Nietian steadied himself and took a deep breath. He thought to himself, this old man is really strong. His palm strike is even stronger than my sacred heaven move. Celestial Star's palm strike was obviously because he was furious. It wasn't his real power, but Nietian used the human sword-cutting stars. Even so, he was still suppressed by the Celestial Star. Celestial Star was stunned. He looked at Nietian in disbelief. He obviously didn't expect Nietian to block his palm strike. It seemed like Nietian wasn't injured at all. That was very scary. Nietian was only a late-stage Supreme God. How could he block a palm strike from an expert at the peak of the half-step? The next moment, Celestial Star calmed down and shouted, Kid, you have some strength. But you ate the Dew Rainbow. You must die. Dew Rainbow was very important to the 10,000 Mountains sect. The three guardians of Dew Rainbow had a great responsibility. If they didn't kill Nietian, how could they explain it to the sect master? Celestial Star's energy sword. He was going to attack again. Celestial Star, stop. Celestial Sun and Celestial Moon shouted at the same time. They moved at the same time to stop the reckless Celestial Star. Celestial Sun, Celestial Moon, what are you doing? Celestial Star shouted in anger. Celestial Star, don't be impulsive. There's something strange about this kid. Celestial Sun frowned. He stared at Nietian and said in a deep voice, Kid, how do you feel now? Nietian was very calm. He looked up and said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, I feel very good. Feel good? Celestial Sun was surprised. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He continued to ask, What do you mean by feeling very good? Nietian was a little confused. He smiled and said, I feel very good. There's nothing strange, and my strength seems to have improved. I should be able to break through soon. This, Celestial Sun was shocked. He gasped and looked at Celestial Moon. Both of them were shocked and said, How is this possible? Celestial Sun, Celestial Moon, what's wrong with you? Did you notice something? Celestial Star was confused when he saw Celestial Sun and Celestial Moon's reaction. Celestial Star, this kid ate the Dew Rainbow, but nothing happened. Don't you think it's strange? Celestial Sun asked in a deep voice. Chapter 2485. Chapter 2485. Chapter 2485. The Star Venerable looked at Nietian in shock, his eyes full of disbelief. He had just realized how strange Nietian was. The Dew Rainbow contained an enormous amount of light and water element power. Moreover, the two elements were perfectly combined, so it was very difficult to absorb. Even a powerhouse like the Master of the Myriad Mountain Sect would need years or even decades to absorb the Dew Rainbow's power. Nietian had just consumed the Dew Rainbow, but he was not affected at all. Instead, he had absorbed the Dew Rainbow's power. This was very strange. Nietian could not help but frown when he saw how surprised the three Venerable Ones were. He was puzzled. Young man, who are you? Yang Zun asked in a deep voice. He was much calmer now. After a moment of pondering, Nietian said honestly, Lord Yang Zun, to tell you the truth, my friend and I aren't from the Frozen Relic. We're from another realm. Another territory? The three Venerable Ones were dumbfounded. They said in shock, Are there other territories outside the frozen remains? The lady in purple and her companions were also shocked. They looked at Nietian and the others curiously. Nietian was not surprised by their reactions. The three Venerable Ones lived in the frozen remains, so it was normal that they did not know about the existence of other territories. Just like the martial artists of the 9 territories, very few people knew that there were other territories outside the 9 territories. If the 9 territories were not closely connected, the people of the 9 territories might not even know about each other's existence. You are not disciples of the Myriad Mountain Sect? Yang Zun came to himself and looked at Nietian with a deep gaze. No, Nyetian shook his head slightly. Even if you are from another territory, how do you explain how you can absorb the dew rainbow's power directly? Star Venerable asked cold. I don't know how to explain it. Nyetian's eyebrows furrowed. Then he thought of something and said, before I came to the frozen relic, I was cursed by a dark and fire-attributed curse. Perhaps because of the curse, I was able to directly absorb the power of the rainbow dew. Huh? The Yongzun was slightly stunned. It was obvious that he was considering whether Nyetian's words were true. Moon supremacy, what do you think? The sun supremacy thought for a moment before looking at the moon supremacy. The three venerables were led by the Yang Supreme, but when the three of them made decisions, the final decision was usually made by the moon supreme. Jun Ouching stole the rainbow dew, and Nye Tian consumed it. According to the rules of the 10,000-weight mountain sect, both of them deserved to die. However, the three venerable ones could tell that Nye Tian and Jun Ouching were quite powerful and talented, so they could not make up their minds. Little brother, what you consumed was the sacred flower of the 10,000-weight mountain sect. The moon supremacy thought for a moment, then looked at Nye Tian and said, the 10,000-weight seventh sect only has this dew rainbow. It was prepared for the sect master. The young lady beside you trespassed into the sacred grounds of the 10,000-weight mountain sect and stole the dew rainbow. This is a serious crime. The three of us saw that you are talented and you are from another territory. You are not familiar with the rules of the 10,000-weight mountain sect, so it is inconvenient for us to kill you. The moon supremacy smiled and said, I plan to do this. You and your friend will follow us to see the sect master. The sect master will decide how to deal with you. What do you think? Nye Tian frowned after hearing the moon supremacy's words. The moon supremacy seemed like a nice person, and every word he said was sincere. In this situation, if Nye Tian did not go with the three venerable ones, it would be a battle of life and death. Nye Tian's strength had not recovered to its peak yet. Even if he was at his peak, it was impossible for him to fight against three experts at the peak of the half-step at the same time. With his current strength, he could at most fight against one expert at the peak of the half-step at the most. Therefore, if he chose to fight back, someone would definitely be injured or even killed. All right, I will go with you. After thinking for a moment, Nye Tian decided to go with the three venerable ones. Although Nye Tian did not know about the dew rainbow, he had taken something from the 10,000-weight mountain sect after all. Therefore, it was reasonable for him to follow the three venerable ones to see the 10,000-weight mountain sect. Nye Tian. Jun Ouching looked at Nye Tian, her eyes sparkling. She was clearly worried. The three venerable ones were terrifying enough. The 10,000-weight mountain sect master was definitely more powerful. If the 10,000-weight mountain sect master was unwilling to forgive Nye Tian in them, wouldn't it be troublesome? Young lady, don't worry. Our sect master is a reasonable person. Explain to him clearly, and I believe he won't make things difficult for you. The Lunar Supreme could tell what Jun Ouching was worried about and said with a smile, Ouching, let's go with the three venerable ones to see the sect master. Nye Tian nodded and said with a smile. Jun Ouching's eyes quivered, and she nodded in the end. You guys come with us. The Lunar Supreme nodded and glanced at the lady in purple and the others. How dare you? Do you know that our lady is... Just then, one of the cultivators looked unhappy and shouted, Chun-san. The cultivator had only spoken halfway when the lady in purple glared at him and told him to stop. Venerable Moon looked at the girl in purple and was stunned for a moment, as if he had noticed something. However, he quickly regained his composure and said with a faint smile, Lady, since you are with these little brothers, you are also involved. Please come with us. The lady in purple nodded slightly. Her expression was strange, as if she was thinking about something. Then, everyone left under the guidance of the three venerable ones. Around half an hour later, Nye Tian and the others arrived at the 10,000-weight mountain sect. At the moment, they were standing on a square with a radius of tens of thousands of meters. Nye Tian, you guys wait here. I'll go ask our sect master. The lunar paragon smiled faintly and left. The Solar Supreme and the Star Supreme stayed where they were and watched over Nyetion and the others. After a while, many disciples of the 10,000-weight mountain sect gathered around. They looked at Nyetion and the others strangely and discussed in low voices. Who are these people? Why have I never seen them before? Did they do something wrong? Why are there people watching over them? They must have broken the rules of the sect. They are waiting to be punished. Who are these two old men? They seem to be very strong. The crowd discussed in low voices, as if they were waiting to see a joke. The three venerable ones guarded the dew rainbow all year round, so the disciples of the 10,000-weight mountain sect did not know them. Nyetion's gaze froze. He could not help but look at the lady in purple. He had thought that the lady in purple and the others were from the 10,000-weight mountain sect, but they were not. Otherwise, how could no one have recognized the lady in purple? Speaking of which, the lady in purple and the others had caused a great commotion in mountains. They should have alerted the higher-ups of the 10,000-weight mountain sect. It's you. Just then, a voice was heard. Then, a figure jumped out and pointed at Nyetion. He shouted, "It's you." Nyetion frowned. He looked at the person and immediately recognized him. When he had first arrived at the frozen relic, he had met a man and a woman. Because they provoked June Ouching, the man was killed by June Ouching and the woman left. Chapter 2486. Chapter 2486. A bunch of trash. The sudden appearance of a lady in pink caused an uproar. The crowd was curious. They wanted to know what was going on. "These are the people who killed young Master Hua," the lady in pink shouted. She was very excited. As soon as her voice fell, it immediately caused an uproar. "What? These people killed young Master Hua? How dare they? How dare they kill young Master Hua?" No wonder the people from the law enforcement hall went to the back of the mountain. They went to catch young Master Hua's murderer. These people are really bold. They killed young Master Hua and still dare to show up here. Nyetion frowned slightly when he heard the crowd. He smiled bitterly and said, "Looks like the scum we killed earlier has a high status in the 10,000 mountain sect." He didn't know that young Master Hua, beggar Zige, whom June Ouching killed, was the grandson of the head elder of the law enforcement hall. "Sirs, these people killed young Master Hua. Take him to the law enforcement hall." The lady in pink shouted at the Sun Venerable and Star Venerable. She had no idea what was going on. "I don't know who young Master Hua is. Piss off." Star Venerable was angry and didn't bother to pay attention to the lady in pink. He scolded her coldly. "You." The lady in pink was shocked. Her expression seemed to be saying, "There's someone in the 10,000 mountain sect who doesn't know young Master Hua." Everyone in the 10,000 mountain sect knew Hua Zigue. It wasn't because he was talented or powerful, but because he had a nickname, Lecherous Hua. Everyone in the 10,000 mountain sect knew that Hua Zigue was a lecherous man. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Hua Zigue had harmed at least 1,000 female disciples in the 10,000 mountain sect. However, because Hua Zigue's grandfather was the head elder of the law enforcement hall, no one dared to provoke him. Everyone was happy to hear about Hua Zigue's death. The crowd was shocked. They were curious that someone didn't know about the famous young Master Hua. They didn't know that not only did the three Supremes not know about Hua Zigue, but they also didn't know about Hua Zigue's grandfather. In the entire 10,000 mountain sect, the three Supremes only knew about the Patriarch. As for the others, they didn't even have the qualifications to deal with them. "Damn, old man, you will regret this." The pink-robed woman was stunned for a moment before she reacted. She said harshly before she turned around and left, "How dare you?" The Star Venerable was taken aback. He was about to attack, but the young Venerable stopped him. "We don't need to lower ourselves to the level of a little boy like you. Let's focus on the big picture," the young Venerable said in a deep voice, trying to calm the Star Venerable down. They didn't care who Nyetion and the others killed. They only cared about the dew rainbow. Nyetion looked at the back of the girl in pink, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He found it a little funny. After the dew rainbow incident, Hanako Gue's death was no longer important. However, after a short while, the pink-clothed woman returned. Furthermore, she brought with her dozens of black-clothed cultivators. Each and every one of them had a ferocious expression, like a pack of hungry wolves. Look, it's people from the law enforcement hall. The people from the law enforcement hall are here. They must be here to arrest these people. I don't know who those two old men are, but they look very powerful. Looks like there's going to be a good show to watch. The crowd immediately recognized the black-clothed cultivators as members of the law enforcement hall. The pink-clothed woman quickly walked over and pointed at Nyetian and the others. She screamed, "They're the ones who killed young Master Hanako." A dark-faced disciple from the law enforcement hall walked over with a cold smile on his face. "Miss Leroux, please step aside. Leave this to us." Nyetian glanced at him and didn't want to look at him a second time. This guy was only a late-stage paramount god, but he looked like he wanted to walk on 3 legs. One look, and Nyetian could tell he was an idiot. As for the other people from the law enforcement hall, there were a few mid-stage paramount gods, and the rest were early-stage paramount gods. Now that he thought about it, Hanako Gue, who had been killed by Jun Aoqing, was probably a core disciple of the 10,000 Layers Mountain sect. After all, he was a late-stage paramount god. Most of the onlookers were lord gods. Only a few of them were early-stage or mid-stage paramount gods. That was why they couldn't see through the sun venerate and the star venerate strength. You killed young Master Hanako, and you still dare to come to the 10,000 Layers Mountain sect? You're really looking to die. The dark-faced man laughed coldly and strode toward Nyetian. Boom! But at that moment, the air suddenly trembled, and a powerful energy wave appeared. The black-faced man let out a strange cry. His body tilted backwards, and he directly fell down. But then he got back to his feet and roared, "Which bastard dared to sneak up on me? Get lost!" The next moment, an angry roar was heard, and a powerful force shot out and sent the dark-faced man flying 100 meters away. The person who had attacked was the Star Venerate. He couldn't be bothered to waste words with the dark-faced man, so he growled, "If you take half a step closer, I'll cripple you." The dark-faced man steadied himself and looked at the Star Venerate in shock. He was so scared that his face turned pale. He hadn't noticed the Star Venerate at all. He had been focused on capturing Nyetian. How could he have imagined that such a powerful martial artist would appear here? Fat old man, don't you know Big Brother Iron Tiger is a disciple of the law enforcement hall? If you dare attack him, you're looking down on the law enforcement hall. The pink-clothed woman was stunned at first, but then she reacted and shouted at the Star Venerate. "You get lost too." The Star Venerate's face fell. He waved his hand, and a powerful energy wave flew out. The pink-clothed woman screamed and was sent flying. She flew 10,000 meters away and hit the ground hard. It was unknown whether she was dead or alive. The Star Venerate was one of the 3 Venerates of the 10,000 Layers Mountain. How could he let a little disciple humiliate him like that? He was being merciful by not killing these people. Star Venerate, don't be impulsive. Why take a group of kids seriously? The Sun Venerate looked at the Star Venerate and tried to persuade him. The Star Venerate said angrily, "What law enforcement hall? They're just a bunch of good-for-nothings. No wonder the 7th sect is getting weaker and weaker. They'll be destroyed by those good-for-nothings sooner or later." Nyetian frowned slightly when he heard the Star Venerate's words. He was confused. He had heard the name 7th sect before, so he was confused. Wasn't this the 10,000 Mountain sect? Why was it the 7th sect? You're so arrogant to say our law enforcement hall is good-for-nothings. At this moment, the void shook slightly, and a low, murderous voice rang out. The next moment, a figure in black appeared. He descended like a mountain. His aura was like a raging sea spreading in the void. The chief elder of the law enforcement hall. The crowd was stunned. They looked at the man and recognized him immediately. They shouted in surprise. Chapter 2487. Chapter 2487. Chapter 2487. The Patriarch shows up. Hwam Yuk showed up. His energy was surging. He stared at the Star Venerable with a vicious look. Nyetian looked at Hwam Yuk and sensed him with his soul consciousness. The corners of his mouth twitched. Hwam Yuk wasn't weak. He was a strong cultivator half a step away from a peak. But his energy was still weaker than the 3 Venerables. "Are you the head elder of the law enforcement hall?" The Star Venerable asked Hwam Yuk coldly. I'm the head elder of the law enforcement hall, Hua Myuk. Hua Myuk responded coldly. He said with a gloomy face, "Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in the 7th faction of the Myriad Mountains?" The 3 Venerables didn't show up in the faction, so even Hua Myuk didn't know the Star Venerable and the Sun Venerable. He treated them as outsiders. Cause trouble? The Star Venerable didn't say who he was. He sneered and said, "Which of your eyes saw me cause trouble? If I really caused trouble, would the good-for-nothings of the law enforcement hall still be standing here?" Hua Myuk's face darkened when he heard the Star Venerable. He said coldly, "You're too arrogant. So what? Bite me if you can." The Star Venerable laughed. He was even more arrogant. He was very angry about the Dew Rainbow. Then he was scolded by a few young people. He was so angry that he wanted to find someone to vent his anger on. Hua Myuk wasn't weak. He could use him to practice and vent his anger. "How dare you?" Hua Myuk shouted angrily. His energy surged crazily. Endless energy surged. So strong. The crowd felt the enormous pressure. They were shaking and stepped back. "Okay, if you want to fight, I'll play with you." The Star Venerable wasn't afraid at all. He smiled coldly. "Star Venerable, don't be reckless," the Sun Venerable said, frowning. "Don't worry, old Yang. I know what I'm doing. I'm just playing with him." The Star Venerable chuckled and took a step forward. His body was surrounded by a surging power. It was thick and powerful. It was magnificent. Hua Myuk frowned. He didn't want to fight. He just wanted to intimidate them. However, since a Star Venerable had come forward, he had to intervene. "Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." Hua Myuk smiled coldly. He moved suddenly, and a black broadsword appeared in his hand. He waved it fiercely, and a broadsword shadow that was thousands of feet long appeared in the air. The moment the broadsword shone, it was like a flowing waterfall of light that pressed down on the Star Venerable. The peak of the fusion of knife and martial arts. "Not bad." The Star Venerable laughed. His tone was provocative. He clenched his fist and punched out. The fist shadows were like wild beasts, roaring and surging in the void. Boom! In the next moment, the 2 violent forces collided with each other. An endless amount of power immediately surged out and wreaked havoc in the space. Immediately, waves of energy visible to the naked eye surged and spread in all directions. Crack, crack, crack. The ground was struck by the impact and directly cracked. Sand and stones flew everywhere, and turbid waves rose to the sky. The crowd retreated to the edge of the huge square. Star Venerable and Hua Myuk dashed into the sky at the same time. Looking at the 2 figures, Tian said to himself, "Strong people half a step away from the peak are really strong." He thought to himself, if he were to fight against one of them at that moment, he would be injured. At that moment, the crowd's eyes were trembling. They were watching the fight in the sky in shock. Boom! Sizzle! Explosions and ear-piercing sounds kept coming from the sky. An endless amount of power was surging into space. Hua Myuk and the Star Venerable exchanged more than 10 blows. The universe was shaking, and the wind and clouds were surging. Bang! At that moment, they exchanged blows again. After a muffled sound, Hua Myuk was sent back thousands of feet, while the Star Venerable was as steady as a mountain. He was motionless. "Grand Elder of the Law Enforcement Hall, is this all you've got?" The Star Venerable sneered and said sarcastically, "I don't think you should be the Grand Elder of the Law Enforcement Hall." Darn it! Hua Myuk steadied himself. His face was slightly flushed, and he was furious. Although his knife spirit was powerful, the Star Venerable was stronger than him. Even though he had the upper hand in every attack, he was still suppressed when they were exchanging blows. In fact, the Star Venerable was holding back his strength. He didn't go all out. Every attack of Hua Myuk was a killing attack, and he went all out. However, the Star Venerable was holding back, trying not to injure him. After all, they were from the same faction. If they really injured Hua Myuk, it would be embarrassing. Boom! At that moment, Hua Myuk's body suddenly shook. His energy started to soar. The knife spirit surging in his body had a strong smell of blood. The Star Venerable was a bit shocked. He didn't expect Hua Myuk would burn his blood and cheat a fight with all his strength. Grand Elder, let's end this fight. It's a tie, the Star Venerable said hurriedly. He knew if the fight went on, it would be a life-or-death fight. It's too late to end it now, Huamyuk shouted angrily. His eyes were filled with killing intent. The blood and chi in his body merged with the knife's spirit. He waved the black broadsword in his hand madly. Boom! A shadow of a broadsword almost 10,000 feet long appeared in the air. It was like a giant roaring beast pressing down on the Star Venerable. Star Venerable. Seeing that, young Venerable shouted in surprise. He knew if the Star Venerable chose to defend in such a situation, he would be seriously injured or even killed. If the Star Venerable fought back with all his strength, Huamyuk would be the one who would be seriously injured or killed. This old guy is crazy. The Star Venerable frowned. He had no choice but to release his energy. You two, please stop. At that moment, the air suddenly shook and a clear voice appeared. Boom! The next moment, a giant handprint appeared in the air, holding the giant broadsword shadow. Bang! The giant handprint suddenly shook, and the broadsword shadow was smashed into pieces. The sudden scene in the sky caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Their expressions were filled with extreme shock. A peak strongman, Nietion's eyes darkened, and he exclaimed inwardly. The person who had blocked Huamyuk's all-out attack so easily must be at the peak of the god state. Huamyuk and the Star Venerable were both dumbfounded. They immediately realized what was going on, and they looked into the air. A figure appeared in the air. She was in a white dress, and she looked ethereal. She had a beautiful face and a curvy body. It was a female martial artist. Lord! When Huamyuk saw the female martial artist's face clearly, he was dumbfounded, and he shouted in surprise. Lord! The Star Venerable also realized what was going on, and he bowed slightly and shouted, Lord! The people below finally recovered from their shock, and they spoke at the same time. Their eyes were filled with admiration. The woman in the white dress was none other than the Lord of the 10,000 Mountain Sect, Purple Bamboo Lulon. She's the Lord? Nietion looked at Purple Bamboo Lulon, and his face froze. Chapter 2488. Chapter 2488. Chapter 2488. Lady of the Imperial Family Nietion stared at Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist for a long time before he recovered from a shock. June Ouching and the others were equally shocked, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Master, this person. High up in the sky, Huamyuk calmed himself down and spoke to Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist. However, before he could finish, he was interrupted by the latter. Let's discuss everything in the 10,000-layer palace. After saying that, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist figure moved and disappeared. Huamyuk frowned, but he was not too surprised. He was already used to Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist personality. Then the Moon Venerable showed up. She came to the Star Venerable and asked in surprise, Star Venerable, what's going on? The Star Venerable smiled embarrassedly. He said, Nothing. I was just playing with this elder. Huamyuk frowned and his face darkened. He wasn't playing with the Star Venerable. He had almost lost his life a moment ago. The Moon Venerable guessed it, but she could do nothing about the Star Venerable. She could only shake her head and smile. Old you, Lulon is getting stronger and stronger, the Star Venerable said in a low voice with a smile. He didn't care about it. Star Venerable, mind your words. You can't call the Lord Patriarch's name so casually. The Moon Venerable frowned unhappily. I will call her Lord in front of you. In front of other people, of course, I will call her Lord. The Star Venerable smiled again. Then his body moved, and he landed. Then, the three Venerables brought Nietion and the others along with Huamyuk to the 10,000-layer palace. A few moments later, they arrived at the entrance of the Wait Palace. Venerable Moon, please enter the hall. Let the unrelated people wait outside. Within the palace, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist's voice sounded out. It was extremely clear and pleasant to the ears, but at the same time, it contained a coldness that kept people at a distance. Yes, Yuzun replied. Then, he glanced at everyone and said, Nietion, June Ouching, you two follow us into the hall. With that, he came to the side of the purple-clothed girl and bowed deeply to the latter. He said respectfully, "Miss Imperial Maiden, please enter the hall as well." "Yes." The purple-robed girl nodded slightly. She wasn't surprised at all. Nietian was taken aback by what he saw, and his face was filled with confusion. Who is this purple-clad girl? Why is Supreme Moon so respectful to her? Yuzun, could she be? The young Zun was also stunned. He cried out in surprise, but he didn't continue. It was unknown whether he couldn't say it or he didn't dare to say it. Venerable Moon just nodded and didn't say much. Next, Nietian and the others followed the three Supremes into the 10,000-layer palace. Huamyuk followed them as well. The 10,000-weight palace was extremely vast. It was tens of thousands of meters in length and width, and several thousand meters in height. At the center of the palace sat a figure. It was the sect master of the 10,000-layer mountain sect, Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist. "Everyone, please sit," Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist said calmly. Her sweet-sounding voice was cold. Nietian and the others took their seats. However, the purple-clothed girl continued to walk forward, step by step. What is she trying to do? Nietian looked at the purple-robed girl and wondered. "Zizhu Xian greets Aunt." The purple-clad girl came to Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist's side and bowed slightly. "Auntie." Nietian was taken aback, and his expression froze. He never thought that the purple-clad girl was the niece of the 10,000-layer mountain sect master. "Xian, how long has it been since we last met?" Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist looked at Zizhu Xian with a cold face. "Auntie, the last time Xian saw Ani was 20 years ago." Zizhu Xin replied respectfully. 20 years ago. Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist smiled strangely and said, "I was still in the main sect then, right?" "Yes." Zizhu Xian nodded. "All right, you can go back and sit." Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist waved her hand and said coldly, "Aunt." Zizhu Xian's beautiful eyes flashed. She hesitated for a moment and suddenly opened her mouth, but stopped. "What's the matter?" Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist raised an eyebrow and asked. "Aunt." Zizhu Xian's expression was complicated. She looked at Nietian and pointed at Nietian and said, "He was the one who consumed the rainbow of dew, but he saved my life. Xian, or wants Aunt to let him go and not kill him. If Aunt wants the rainbow of dew, Xian, can talk to Father and ask him to send someone to give Aunt another one." "Oh." Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist smiled strangely and said, "Do you think Father will agree to give me another one?" Zizhu Xian's eyes flickered and said, "As long as Xian asks, Father will definitely agree. Is that so?" Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist smiled cold and waved her hand. "Go back and sit." Zizhu Xian frowned slightly. She wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, she decided not to. She turned around and sat next to Nietian. "Miss Zizhu, what's going on?" Nietian was confused. He couldn't help but ask Zizhu Xin through voice transmission, "Are you from the 10,000-weight mountain sect?" Now, Nietian was a little confused. He had no idea who Zizhu Xin was. "I'm from the main sect of the 10,000 mountain sect. My aunt is the sect leader of the 7th branch sect." Zizhu Xian could tell that Nietian was confused. She said telepathically, "We're at the 7th branch now." Nietian frowned, and his expression froze when he heard Zizhu Xian's words. He finally understood a little. The 10,000 mountain sect was much more terrifying than he had imagined. The 10,000 mountain sect should be a super large sect. It was divided into the main sect and the branch sections. Zizhu Xian was from the main sect, while Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist was the sect leader of the 7th branch sect. At this point, Nietian couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw with his own eyes that Purple Bamboo, Flowing Mist was at the peak of the immortal state. The three venerables were also half-step pinnacle powerhouses. Even the great elder of the Hall of Law Enforcement, Huamyuk, was close to half-step pinnacle. And this was just the strength of one branch sect of the 10,000 mountain sect. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the 7th branch sect of the 10,000 mountain sect would be a peak faction in the 9 realms, comparable to the Wind and Cloud Alliance or the Sacred Parliament. However, it was just one branch sect of the 10,000 mountain sect. How terrifying would the strength of the entire 10,000 mountain sect be? With such a comparison, Nietion felt that the frozen ruins were much more powerful than the Nine Realms. They were even more powerful than the Nine-lead demonic realm. Still, he did not know if there were any demi-saint or pseudo-saint powerhouses in the frozen ruins. Miss Ziju, I would like to ask, how many branches does your 10,000 mountain sect have? Nietion forced himself to calm down and asked in a deep voice. Ziju Xin frowned. She thought for a moment and shook her head. I'm not too sure. There should be dozens of branches. Dozens? Nietion's eyes narrowed. He was so shocked that he almost screamed. He never thought that the 10,000 mountain sect had dozens of branches. If every branch sect was as powerful as the seventh sect, wouldn't that mean that the 10,000 mountain sect strength was equivalent to dozens of wind and cloud alliances? How could the frozen ruins have such a powerful force? Before entering the frozen ruins, Nietion had thought that the realm was very weak. It was only now that he realized that the frozen ruins were much more powerful than the Nine Realms. You are the one who swallowed the rainbow of dew. Just as Nietion was in a state of shock, purple bamboo flowing mist's cold voice resounded. It was bone-chilling and suffocating. Nietion was stunned. He looked up at purple bamboo flowing mist and could not help but tremble. Chapter 2489. Chapter 2489. Chapter 2489. Shouldering the burden, Nietion sensed the killing intent in purple bamboo mist's eyes. His expression changed slightly, but he quickly calmed down and nodded. Very good. Purple bamboo mist smiled strangely. She then shifted her gaze to June Ouching and asked in a deep voice, Are you the one who stole the dew rainbow? Yes, June Ouching replied straightforwardly. To be able to steal something from the hands of the three Zun, you must be very strong. Purple bamboo mist smiled coldly. A strange light flickered in her eyes. In the next moment, she suddenly did something shocking. She suddenly extended her arm. Instantly, a soft force shot out. It was so fast that it was faster than the blink of an eye. Buzz! June Ouching suddenly felt the pressure. Just as she wanted to resist, she was shocked to find that her body was enveloped by a terrifying force. She could not move at all. In the next moment, June Ouching screamed. Her body suddenly floated into the air. It was as if an invisible hand had lifted her up. Ouching! The sudden scene caused Nietion's pupils to shrink, and he immediately let out a cry of shock. His figure instantly moved, and a starlight heavenly slash appeared in his hand, and he violently thrust it towards purple bamboo mist. Courting death. Facing Nietion's sword strike, purple bamboo flowing mist let out a cold laugh as she made a grabbing motion with her hand. Instantly, an illusory green palm appeared in midair and pounced down towards Nietion like a raging tidal wave. Nietion's gaze froze. The sword intent around his body surged violently. Wherever his sword passed, a huge sword shadow appeared. Rumble! In the air, two terrifying forces collided. The space froze for a moment. Immediately, an endless amount of energy spread out. At that moment, Nietion, who was in the air, felt a soft and endless energy enveloping him. He felt a huge pressure. However, when he suddenly saw June Ouching, he immediately roared. Waves of starlight heaven released and forcefully broke through the restraints around him. Let her go. In the next moment, Nietion bellowed and attacked with the starlight heaven again. Sword images resembled wild dragons as they attacked purple bamboo, flowing mist. Purple bamboo flowing mist exclaimed in surprise. Evidently, she had not expected Nietion to be so powerful. However, she regained her composure in the blink of an eye. Her palm turned slightly in the air, and a green light appeared. Like an arrow leaving a bow, it suddenly shot out like lightning. Pump! The green light streaked across the sky, and the sword's shadow immediately shattered. Nietion's figure flew backward and heavily smashed into a stone pillar in the hall. He steadied his body, his eyes filled with anger as he glared at purple bamboo flowing mist. My little friend Nietion, don't be impulsive. Right at this moment, venerated Moon spoke and indicated to Nyetian to calm down. However, Nyetian didn't care. He stared at purple bamboo flowing mist with killing intent as he roared, "Release him!" Sure, out of everyone's expectation, purple bamboo mist smiled lightly, loosened his grip, and let go of June Ouching. After June Ouching landed, she moved to Nyetian's side and asked anxiously, "Nyetian, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Nyetian nodded his head and his tense expression relaxed. Purple bamboo flowing mist strength was terrifying. It was not something that Nyetian could fight against. It was obvious that purple bamboo flowing mist had not used her full strength in the previous attack. Otherwise, Nyetian would definitely be injured. "Lord Sect Leader, what is the meaning of this?" Nyetian became cold and stared at purple bamboo flowing mist as he asked coldly. "Nothing." Purple bamboo mist smiled faintly as she looked at Nyetian with a strange look in her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. "Lord Sect Leader, I have consumed the dewdrop rainbow. If you want to do anything, just do it to me. Don't make things difficult for others." Nyetian Tianling said coldly. "Your name is Nyetian, right? Sit down and don't get too excited." Purple bamboo flowing mist smiled and gestured for Nyetian to sit down. Nyetian frowned and sat down in the end. He was confused. What was purple bamboo flowing mist trying to do? "Lord Sect Leader, what exactly do you want to do? Just say it." Nyetian sat down and said with a gloomy face. Purple bamboo flowing mist's lips curled into a strange smile. She seemed to be calculating something and said, "The dewdrop rainbow is the sacred flower of the 10,000 Mountain Sect. There's only one dewdrop rainbow in every branch sect. Now that I've put it this way, do you understand how important the dew rainbow is to the 7th sect?" "I understand," Nyetian answered with a grim face. "What happened with the rainbow of dew was indeed our fault. June Ouching stole the dewdrop rainbow in order to save me. I was also the one who consumed the dewdrop rainbow. I am willing to bear all the blame." Purple bamboo mist looked at Nyetian, and with a strange smile, she asked, "Shoulder the burden? Are you sure you can shoulder it? The dewdrop rainbow is the sacred flower of our sect. According to the rules of the sect, everyone related to it must die." On the other side, Huamyuk's voice rang out. He stared coldly at Nyetian with a pair of deep eyes. How could he not know that the silver-haired young man in front of him was Hua Zigui's murderer? That was why he wanted Nyetian dead more than anyone else. "Huh?" Purple bamboo, flowing mist frowned, and suddenly looked at Huamyuk. Her expression was clearly saying, "Did I allow you to speak?" Huamyuk knew purple bamboo flowing mist personality. He was so scared that his face changed and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He did not dare to speak again. The 3 high masters were confused as they watched from the side. They did not know what purple bamboo flowing mist was planning. "I think I can bear all the blame." Nyetian was very calm. He even had a faint smile on his face as he said, "And I know that you think I can bear all the blame." "Huh?" Purple bamboo flowing mist frowned and asked with a smile, "Why do you think so?" "Because the sect master went easy on me just now." Nyetian answered calmly, his face filled with confidence. "You to go easy on me." Purple bamboo flowing mist's sudden attack just now was not to kill. It was obvious that she was testing Nyetian's strength. Therefore, Nyetian guessed that purple bamboo flowing mist wanted him to do something for her. Impressive. Purple bamboo flowing mist's eyes narrowed slightly. She then smiled and said, "Nyetian, you have really amazed me. Not only are you powerful and talented, but your temperament and shrewdness are also extraordinary." The corner of Nyetian's mouth twitched slightly as he said, "Lord Sect Leader, you can save the pleasantries. If there's anything you want to say, please just say it. You're straightforward." "Very good." Purple bamboo flowing mist was not angry. She smiled and said, "My request is very simple. As long as you agree to one of my conditions, I will not pursue the matter regarding the dewdrop rainbow." "What conditions?" Nyetian frowned, and his expression flickered. The dewdrop rainbow was the sacred flower of the 10,000 Mountain Sect. As a branch sect, the 7th sect only had one. If purple bamboo flowing mist said that she would not pursue the matter, then her condition would not be simple. Join the seventh sect. Purple bamboo, flowing mist's lips twitched. Chapter 2490. I am the rules. Purple bamboo mist condition was for Nye Tian to join the seventh sect. This was something Nye Tian had not expected. To others, this condition might not be difficult. In fact, it might even be a good thing. After all, Purple Bamboo Fragrance had said that the 10,000 Mountain sect was one of the top 7 sects in the frozen ruins. Although the 7th sect was only a branch sect of the 10,000 Mountain sect, there was a high chance of joining the main sect. Becoming a member of the 10,000 Mountain sect was the dream of many martial artists in the frozen ruins. But to Nye Tian, this condition was very difficult. He had fought his way up from the bottom of the 3,000 lesser worlds, so he rarely joined any organizations. He liked to roam the world freely, and joining an organization meant that he would be restricted. If he joined the 7th sect, and Purple Bamboo Mist insisted that he stay in the sect, what would he do? Purple Bamboo Mist's words shocked not only Nye Tian, but also the 3 Venerable Ones and Huamyuk. They had not expected Purple Bamboo Mist to propose this condition to Nye Tian. What was even more unexpected was that Nye Tian was hesitating. It seemed like he did not want to join the 7th sect. What? You don't want to? Purple Bamboo Mist frowned when she saw that Nye Tian did not speak for a long time. She asked in a cold tone, Lord Sect Leader, what do you plan to do if I don't agree? Nye Tian's eyes flashed as he suddenly asked, This is the greatest concession this sect master can make, and also my only condition. Purple Bamboo Mist's expression turned cold. If you don't agree, don't blame me for being merciless. Nye Tian could feel the killing intent in Purple Bamboo Mist's eyes, and his gaze narrowed. Of course, he knew what Purple Bamboo Mist meant by merciless. She meant to kill them. In this situation, Nye Tian had no choice. If Purple Bamboo Mist wanted to kill them, they would not be able to fight back. Putting aside the fact that Purple Bamboo flowing mist strength was unfathomable, Nye Tian did not have the confidence to deal with the 3 Venerables or even Huamyuk. After a moment of thought, Nye Tian's eyes glittered as he said, Sect Lord, I can join the 7th sect, but I have some conditions. When the 3 Venerable Ones and Huamyuk heard what Nye Tian said, they were all stunned. Nye Tian's actions were too arrogant. Purple Bamboo Mist had allowed him to join the 7th sect and not pursue the matter regarding the Dew Rainbow. That was a huge gift from the heavens. Not only did he not appreciate her kindness, he even brought up his conditions. Wasn't this testing Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist patience? To everyone's surprise, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist did not get angry. Instead, she asked seriously, What are your conditions? Tell me. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist's attitude stunned the 3 Venerables and Huamyuk. They all knew that Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist was a cold and detached person. But why did Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist show such leniency towards Nye Tian? I can join the 7th sect, but no one can restrict my freedom. Nye Tian nodded slightly and said in a deep voice. His words stunned the 3 Venerable Ones and Huamyuk once again. If Nye Tian could come and go as he pleased after joining the 7th sect, what difference would it make if he joined or not? Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist frowned. She was seriously considering Nye Tian's conditions. The 3 Venerable Ones looked at each other, confused. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist wouldn't really agree to Nye Tian's conditions, would she? I can agree to your conditions, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist said after a moment. After a short moment, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist spoke. However, for the following month, you must listen to this sect master's arrangements. All right, no problem. Nye Tian thought for a moment, then agreed without hesitation. He could afford a month's time. Sect Lord this. Seeing that Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist had agreed, Huamyuk's face turned ugly. He wanted to say something. It's decided. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist didn't give Huamyuk a chance to speak. She cut him off cold. But this is against the rules of the 7th sect. Huamyuk mustered up his courage and said cautiously, I'm the rule in the 7th sect. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist looked cold at Huamyuk and said domineeringly, In the 7th sect, I am the rule. Huamyuk broke out in a cold sweat. He took a deep breath and was speechless. He didn't even dare to mention that Hua Ziguei had been killed. Sect Lord, what do you want me to do for the next month? Nie Tian asked with a smile. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist wanted him to have a month's time. I want you to represent the 7th sect and participate in the path to heaven. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist replied with a warm smile. Path to heaven? Nie Tian was stunned. He didn't know what Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist meant. You don't need to know now. You'll understand in half a month. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist smiled again and said mysteriously. Nie Tian frowned and didn't ask any more questions. Lord Sect Leader, haven't we already decided on the candidates for the path to heaven? At this moment, Hua Myuk's expression changed as he spoke with an ugly expression. Can I just change my mind? Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist laughed and ignored Hua Myuk. The 3 Supremes had strange expressions on their faces. They didn't expect Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist to let Nie Tian participate in the path to heaven. Sect Lord, it's been so many years. You still haven't given up on that person, Moon Supremacy said to Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist. Purple Bamboo Fragrance, stay behind. The others can leave, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist said coldly at this moment. Nie Tian and the others stood up and left the hall. After a while, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist and Zizhu Xian were the only ones left in the hall. Auntie, what's the matter? Zizhu Xian asked timidly. She seemed to be afraid of Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist looked at Zizhu Xian and didn't say anything. She waved her hand and threw something at her. What's this? Zizhu Xian caught the item. It was a small bottle, but she didn't know what was inside. The blood of the Phantom Wolf Emperor. Take it back to save your brother, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist said without looking at Zizhu Xian. Really? Zizhu Xian shouted in surprise. Thank you, Auntie. She had come to the 7th sect to get the blood of the Phantom Wolf Emperor to cure her brother's strange illness. She didn't dare to reveal her identity because she was afraid that Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist would stop her. Zizhu Xian's father, who was also Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist's elder brother, Purple Bamboo Wolf 7, had sent people to the 7th sect many times to ask for the blood of the Phantom Wolf Emperor. But every time, the people sent by Purple Bamboo Wolf 7 were severely injured by Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist, and they couldn't get the blood of the Phantom Wolf Emperor. Zizhu Xian only knew that there was a conflict between her father and her auntie, but she didn't know why. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist had left the Myriad Mountains main sect to avoid Purple Bamboo Wolf 7. I'm tired. You can go back. Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist said in a deep voice, Don't let your father know that you've seen me, and don't let him know that I'm the one who gave you the blood of the Phantom Wolf Emperor. Do you understand? Why? Zizhu Xian was stunned. She didn't understand. There's no why. You can go, Purple Bamboo Flowing Mist replied in a cold voice.